Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to VALORANTing, a professional ranting show, the natural enemy of out-of-touch ex-sports executives. I am Mitch Leslie here with Veli and Van Silly. Last week was a controversial week. I'm still feeling the hangover from it, but there is still more Valorant coming. We had so much to talk about this week with VCT EU NA. We're going to have RyanCentral come on the show as well and talk us through a little bit about what's been going on. Gentlemen, how are we today?
I'm doing. Wait, Vans, you go first, and when you talk, you need to take off your hat. All right, man. Show off your new hair.
Hey, we're inside. Have some damn manners, fam.
I literally was just taking it off. So yeah, I tried to cut my hair yesterday, and it started very badly. So okay, so here's the thing. So good thing first off is that I'm a caster. I can wear headphones. It's not a problem. So it doesn't feel that much. Right? So my wife sends me this video. Hey, how to cut your own hair? Yeah, exactly. So she goes, hey, watch this video. So this dude says, start with a 0.08 and try to snip it. So I'm like, and I'm sorry. She's like, no, don't do it. And I already just did it. And she's like, oh no, we just screwed it up. So I tried to fix it. This is the best I could do. Now that I'm taking off the hat, if I leave it in the front, I kind of look like the guy that looks for the stones in The Fifth Element, or like an Asian Hitler. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
you guys choose.
Van's on the right side. It reminds me of a particular North Korean dictator. The left side is fine, right? It's just that side.
I
It's just
have the same weight for that too.
it's just a bit crispy. What's going on with you, Valley? What's good, fam?
Yo, I'm chilling. Yo. First off, Uber, I'm doing all right, but you got to be doing better, man. I just want to say that ever since you came to VALORANTing, you popped off. I'm not gonna front, Uber. I never thought. I'm gonna be real. I never thought there was a universe where you and I will work together, right? I love Overwatch, right? But seeing you come here, have a rant that goes viral about casting and shit like that, it's been amazing, man. But I'm excited for today's episode. New org just joined the scene, and plus VCT is, the first part is over with.
Oh, I know, but I mean, it gets better because I don't know how people have time to watch all this Valorant and also play the fucking game.
Dude.
I don't know how it's possible. I don't want to, like, there's people on Reddit who profess this knowledge of like every region plus Brazil, LATAM, and Korea. I'm like, fuck off, mate. You just read a primer somewhere. Like you're either sat in Cerebro, right? You're like Charles Xavier, just pumping this Valorant knowledge into your head, or you're cheating. Either way.
I thought we were just talking about Sideshow here.
Oh, I mean,
Sideshow, he's not real.
Dude, I mean, even he, I know he's got his limitations because I saw him the other day. He was playing Overwatch, and I'm like, he's going to be watching VODs now for like 8 hours to try and catch up on what he's missed. Like, there are times when he can't do live companion streams because he's watching VODs of EU.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Crazy.
I don't know how anyone does it. It is actually being a scene expert in Valorant. Like, you basically can only really cover one or two scenes, and then you just go watch all the podcasts and recycle all the opinions of the esteemed hosts of those particular shows and try and do something with it
as well, on top of Valorant in every region. That shit's hard, man.
He's man.
Motherfucker don't do anything else. I mean, sure as hell don't get outside, fam. That's all I'm saying. Let's move on. We got some roster moves that we had this week, so we kind of touched on it. We teased it mid-show last week, but Fnatic have made their foray into Valorant. They sign Summon FC. Again, it's great to see strong UK representation, not only in Summon FC, but now Fnatic also nodding that, considering their sort of base of operations is kind of in London as it is. But this is great, very well deserved for Summon FC. Great underdog story from this team, and now they're getting paid.
Yes,
super happy for them. Super happy for them. But at the same time, now that I know what Summon FC stands for, I kind of wish they kept that name.
Yeah. You know what it means, Belly? Did you get to
wait? Sage Ult my
Sage Ult my nan.
Yeah. It's like the best name ever. So I think that would have been good for like marketing too, if they were going to be like an under umbrella of Fnatic and just keep Summon in there, and then the amount of like meme merchandise they could sell with that would be awesome.
And the best part is they just stick FC on the end of it, like it's a fucking football club. Excuse me.
It's the best.
That interview actually, by the way, that they did was really good when they discussed what their name meant. But also what this means, this team wasn't getting paid from last time I heard, right? I might be wrong. But now they're getting paid. Now they have org support. Now they're getting the placements. This team is only going to get better. Teams get better when this happens. They got the money,
in the immediate short term, though. I mean, it's a bit of a rocky week for them, but we'll get to touch on that a little bit later on. because another team obviously makes its way into Europe. We've been teasing this on the show for a while. It's been mentioned already. The Frenzy Go Kill roster finally rebrands as Team Vitality. There are not many European orgs yet to step into Valorant. And this one, of course, classically a roster with French backing. This was built around Brams here. And yeah, we definitely expect to see this team make some waves. They, I would say, are knocking on the door of tier 1. They're still a little bit off the front of the pack, though.
I'm okay with that. You don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean that because you're such a huge org, you need to pick up a huge team right away. And when we were watching FGK last week or 2 weeks ago during the Red Bull homeground, they were decent. You know, there's some moments and opportunities and room to grow. But if they're willing to go with that backing, especially like you're looking at the coaching staff that they have just for the CS:GO team, this is definitely going to help this team, Frenzy Go Kill, to move forward in their Valorant careers.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to jump straight in here. This is us being led by the hand by production. Cloud9 makes a announcement. A new addition to their roster is Poise. Now, okay, so I don't know much about this guy, but the reason why I'm particularly excited is because he's come from SOAR, you know, this team that produced Chemicals and Nature, who looked unbelievable, just unbelievable out of the gates when they joined Immortals. So, I mean, that is honestly all I know about this guy. But that gives me a lot of hope. I think he's a Jet player primarily.
Yeah, he's a Jet player. And you know what? This brings up a sick question now. Mitch is currently the Jet for this roster. So what's going to happen to Mitch? Is Mitch going to have a role change? Are we going to see him on Jet anymore? Because from what I see right now, there is no reason at all to take Poise off of Jet. Poise literally has 10s-like stats. He has Scream-like stats, but he goes positive in a big way. Talking about 20 kills, 10 deaths consistently. He is going to be that explosive playmaker for this roster. So is he going to be the bench player, just a crazy cracked out Jet? They're going to put in against teams like TSM, heavy operas and whatnot, or is he slowly going to work his way to the main lineup and we're going to see something different with Mitch? I don't know yet. This is going to be a big question mark for this Cloud9 roster because, listen, Leaf is here, Sunny's here. They're doing something, and none of us really know what's up.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. First off, about Poise, he's also known as Doink Machine, right? So if you don't know about Poise, he was also one of those top players in that leaderboard in North America.
Top 2!
He's very high ranked.
Exactly. Yeah. And then he plays with SOR straight out of ranked. 2 of those players got picked up by Immortals, and we see how good Immortals are right now in the past VCTs. I think Poise is going to be one of those players that could definitely help out any team that he joins, at least in terms of that firepower. And what I do like about, again, I've mentioned it during the broadcast last week, but it's the mentality that Nature and Chemical has joining Immortals with the coaching staff that they have. It's like they have a mentality that they're okay to get coached and they're ready to get coached. So I think Poise probably has that same type of attitude if he's scouted the same way for Cloud9. And Cloud9 without 10s already looks super great. And if maybe they want Poise that as a Jet player could have that potential impact that 10s kind of left behind, that could be a great addition too. But on the other end, Cloud9 Blue looks really good without 10s right now. They look much better without 10s, without like bashing 10s at all, but they look good as a unit. They look good as a team. Now for the 6-man roster, is it going to be about, hey, it's going to be about the maps. It's going to be about players maybe feeling burnt out. If the schedule's too heavy, you could rotate some players around. I mean, shit,
I'm burnt out watching all these motherfucking games, dude. I feel that.
Exactly.
Everyone needs a 6-man roster.
Exactly. So that I think that would be a great addition right now for these type of teams right now, especially when you're going through the gauntlet of 3 weeks of open qualifiers to a Masters. You don't make it to that one, well, another 3 weeks of open qualifiers and another Masters going into this year. There's going to be a lot of games to be played for a lot of these players, and if you're going to keep them the mentality of these players sane, if you keep that into your thoughts of running this team, I think having a 6-man is good for that sense too.
But then having a 6-man, then it goes to a deeper discussion, right? The discussion is, okay, so if you have a 6-man and that 6-man is better on a primary role than someone that's on that starting roster, still, the conversation is going to stand. Yeah. What's going to happen? What changes are going to be made? Composition, of course.
Yeah, and hopefully you're not playing to eventually cut a player. I don't think that would be the reason why you want to have a 6-man roster, especially with the roster that just got announced here at Cloud9. But you know, Mitch is a type of player that has been very, very good on Killjoy, for example. And, and Zeta, when he's playing more of just like a Breach and Sova, and maybe even Omen when he came from Korea. Now, looking at different maps, we talked a lot about players, and we want players to flex different agents in rosters too. Don't be a one-trick pony into your roles. If map changes, new agents come out, you need to be versatile. So now you add another player that's a great duelist in Jet, but if he's going to be able to develop into there's player development in this player development staffing in this organization with Cloud9. So they probably have ways to maybe develop poise to be able to branch out to other different agents too. And again, mixing all those things together could be that winning solution for Cloud9 in the future.
I like Cloud9, Uber.
I mean, listen, my experience with teams with 6-man rosters or with like extra players or subs is that like rarely do these players split time 50-50. It ends up being more like 80-20 in a lot of cases. Yeah. And that can cause its own host of problems. The player doesn't get enough. We have 5 maps in Valorant, right? Yeah. I definitely think that Icebox and Split are good examples of maps where you need to play different compositions, right? You just have to. Yeah. So many things are playing like the single duelist composition on some of these maps. They want to take both the Sage and the Viper on, Split sometimes. Icebox, we see a lot of different play there. The Sky gets mixed in a whole bunch. If anyone, like when I look at the C9 roster, I think, okay, who's the most flexible player? Because they're probably the one that's actually going to suffer most from this and get, subbed out and moved in and out of the team as needed. Because if you're like a Jet, mate, I mean, you're probably just going to be playing Jet a heck of a lot of the time. That makes me think of, like a Leaf and Zeta. I'd say the 2 most flexible players on that roster. But I think Zeta is such an important part of this Cloud9 equation right now because we don't see a ton of breach play in NA, especially with AZK departing T1 as well. Like whereas in South Korea, every single game, there is a breach, and teams are getting a heck of a lot of value out of that utility. So, while NA's still playing in the kiddie pool with like triple duelist compositions and just trying to get to grips with the EU Sage setups and finding out where Viper sort of fits in here, South Korea is already getting the most out of their utility offerings in a lot of these particular agents. So maybe that this just gives C9 more options.
Yeah.
I would, here's the thing, right? You got to sort of walk before you can run. I would have maybe preferred to see C9 really nail down their fundamentals with a 5-man roster that doesn't rotate before they start embellishing a little bit here. But I mean, unless they've been working on some stuff in the kitchen in the background, fam, I just think that this is quite elaborate for a team that is still knocking on the door of tier 1.
Yeah.
What do we know? We're just casters, right?
at least for us in a North American setting of BO3s that are available, a 6-man roster seems to make sense. But if you're going to look at EU, where, for example, they do have a 6-man roster with Rubino joining recently, and they're playing BO1s, that's where it's a little bit more.
What the? Oh, I mean, come on. I don't really get that, dude. That does not. I mean, it's like a player coach. It's like we're actually seeing that happen in Overwatch now, actually, with some like 2-way player coaches coming in. Like Jake has done that. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but I mean, you never know until you see teams try it out. But normally, I just see teams, the more complicated and convoluted they try and make their solution, the less effective it tends to be. So I will belay the judgment on C9. Every time I think I know what I'm going to see from C9, they just completely do something different. So whatever, that's not about me. Hey, let's have a look at one of the more recent announcements, actually. Now, this was teased yesterday. I'm thinking, what the fuck are these guys talking about here? Version 1, this is a rebrand from the Minnesota Rocker, right? And I only realized this from seeing this video and being like, okay, purple. They're purple, and this version 1 roster's purple, so they must be the kind of same thing. I guess I don't. I get that. It could be a merger. It could be like a Sentinels LA Gladiators kind of thing. Either way, version 1 announced a Valorant roster, and this is the kind of the announcement video that went with it. I'm cool with it. Looks good. I like this little, that the V becomes a Valorant logo. I see what you did there. Yeah, version 1 has a V. Valorant has
Marketing
a V.
on point.
I mean, it's a natural movement, and I know who's really happy right now is Wyatt River over on the Plat Chat podcast, because every episode he likes to remind viewers why that it's insane that FEs doesn't have a roster yet, and that he's insane. So,
yeah.
Congrats to this roster in general, and Vanity's on there too.
Definitely.
Thank God, Vanity finally has a home that's just like set in stone. We've been waiting for Vanity to like get comfortable for a while now, right?
Yep. Yeah, dude, I echo the same sentiments as Wyatt, for example, because FEs in Player 1 were cut from Gen G when they weren't necessarily bad players. It was just at some point where Gen G had to make some sort of change, to try to find a winning solution and going through not necessarily roster iterations, but role changes for all those 5 players for such a long time, where Effie's was also mainly playing Sage for that roster before. It just didn't work out, so they mutually parted ways. So for them to have a chance now to play with version 1 is amazing. And I think for 2 other players in that roster for me too, I'm looking at Vanity and at Penny, maybe even Zelsis too, because coming from Counter-Strike for me, Zelsis had a small stint with Cloud9, and when he actually got dropped from Cloud9, he never really was able to play at a top scene in NA for tier 1. And when you're looking at Vanity and when you're looking at Penny, they're players that came from Triumph and from Chaos. And Triumph and Chaos, I can name more names. There's Leaf, there's Infinite, there's MCE that's now a coach for Gen G, there's Moose, there's Ryan, there's Curry, with rumors Curry joined T1 right now. So I love the fact that because the NA scene for CS kind of like got let go for a bit towards the end of 2020, looking to be revitalized now. But it's great to see that these players making a switch to Valorant have a great support system and are able to join big teams. And I'm looking forward for this roster. I mean, for Never Done, they had a great series versus FaZe where they lost 2-1, but they still put an impact for players that just switched over from CS and still bring FaZe to a third map. I know you have different probably comments about it's just FaZe, right, Mitch? But I think this is a great series to play against FaZe, and I even think that they're playing against FaZe again in the open qualifiers number 2. So great tests.
FaZe are well positioned to succeed in a sort of metagame that involves playing Reyna and walking down mid. So I still think that this is I think Effie's is such a, I don't know. I love players that like look really good on like the breaches and the Sovas, and the Sages, like players like Sick. This is what I want to see in Valorant, is that these individuals that really understand how to use utility. Effie's, I mean, I'm pretty sure I watched Split. I watched the first map because I think it was like Chadlantis and Golden Falcon were casting it for this this community trial thing, and it was Split, and I was actually really impressed. It was good to see player 1 was still player 1 was on Killjoy.
Cypher or Killjoy, he was playing
now. I mean, okay, fair enough, but it was Effie's playing the breach on that map, and I'm like, fuck, this team's good. This is like a shoe-in tier 2 roster with mad growth potential, right? Especially like
big time.
Who knows what Vanity provides now, going forward as he grows into this roster. So here I am thinking that, with Temperature and Alexander going to EG, that we're sort of running out of like free agent top NA prospects, and still we found more. So congrats. This is also, for those that aren't aware, this is the organization that is owned by Gary Vaynerchuk.
I was just about to say that. Yes. And if you guys do not watch the CDL or anything like that, I believe they had their first LAN event over there, and Gary V threw a fucking party. Gary V loves esports. He's that philosophical get rich guy, I think, on YouTube or whatnot.
Dude, I used to watch
that motivational speaker. Yeah, used to watch him.
He had a YouTube. Gary V started off with a YouTube channel where he tasted wines called Wine Library TV, and I loved it back when I was training to be a sommelier as a younger guy. I used to watch it all the time. That's where this guy kind of kicked off from. He'd literally sit on camera and he'd get his wine and he'd go, spit it out, and he'd just talk about it. It's fucking incredible content, and I consumed it so much when I worked in the beverage industry. So that's where I knew him from, and I realized he was like some rich entrepreneur. I was like,
But the thing is, the thing about him is that he understands this. He understands gamers. He understands what we like, and with him pairing up with players like Vanity, picking up versatile players that are fucking amazing like Effie's, this team, I honestly think that like they're either going to start off high tier 2, or they can honestly like kick things off like low mid tier 1. The potential's nuts, man.
They'll beat TSM next time they play them. Don't worry. That seems to be the trajectory that
relax.
Teams take. What do you mean relax? That's what I'm fucking. That shit's happening in front of my very eyes right now. This seems fucked up. Shit's upside down, and I'm not talking about Australia, fam. It's wild.
No, pretty dope. Pretty dope to see high investors involved in this and branching out from CDL over to Valorant right now. It's a great crossover in my opinion, because when you look at the franchises and what they have currently for Blizzard Activision for the CDL, and to see like the Minnesota Rocker, the Toronto Ultra that I'm wearing right now too, it's just nice to see that they really have like the city-based kind of thing, just like
well, watch out, that's controversial, right Vans.
But they're way more
teams.
What I do like about this for CDL is that their branding and stuff of that is like way more street. I think CDL for me has a type of like branding that's very close to Valorant, in my opinion. And if Valorant would get into that type of like franchising look of like streetwear, kind of that
Way
kind
more
of stuff, I
street.
think it's pretty dope.
Wait, Vince.
Way more street. What
Did
are the
you
team?
not watch
Florida is a
First
fucking
Strike?
octopus. It's a
Wait,
fucking octopus, bro.
Wait, First Strike.
At least Hangzhou Spark is like this. People do this on the street, don't they? Hey, what's up? Hey, I'm sure Fonzie is fucking pounding one of these out on the street. I don't know what's wrong with that kind of branding. What's wrong with a fucking palm tree or a coconut bomb? That's street.
Wait, Vasily. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You were on First Strike with me. We're sitting there, fucking Dash is wearing fucking streetwear jackets.
So
I'm wearing fucking a gold chain and shit with my button up half done. We got Jordan Fisher, YouTube, Netflix dancing, do it all star. Like, we're urban as shit here. In First Strike,
what I'm saying is, I feel like what we did for First Strike, we were still trying to find like our identity as the image we want to project too. Because if you're looking at EU, for example, you had a bunch of people that are streets, but then you also had Mitchman that had a full out suit. And then, and it's the same thing right now when you're looking at formats, which we're going to talk about later.
Oh, because no motherfucker in NA
it's all
can
over the
afford
place.
to buy street clothes because they're getting paid $150 a day, Van Silly. All right? The prize motherfuckers aren't turning up in burlap sacks, bro. Shit.
Yo, if anything, we can make burlap sack look fucking good.
Oh, my God, dude. Motherfucker, how much you get for $400? Fucking hell, man. Guys, hey, you want to talk shit on the branding of the Overwatch League? These motherfuckers at least wearing Balenciaga. You better fucking believe they backed the Brinks truck up for your boy when it comes to Reside season. I know where I'd rather be. I wouldn't want to be on the streets. I'd rather be in the fucking money, baby.
Let's go.
Speaking of money, looks like AZK and Brax have lost their opportunity to make some more in the near-term future.
Crazy.
T1 makes a huge announcement. This guy, I mean, shit, I can fucking read the future in this guy's dome, but he's got plans. He's got thoughts about his roster. New coach comes on board who he seems to be a bit more of like a behavioral specialist. I'm sure he doesn't have anything to say about me.
Like, when you're looking at him right now.
Oh God, I wasn't ready for that.
No, Uber's on one. No, go ahead, fans.
Sorry, I was gonna say he kind of does look like that when you kind of watch his video and the announcement and what they had to do with the changes and stuff like that too. He seems to be that type of person that's gonna try to like calm things down and make sure that if the tension gets high, then it's gonna be taken care of through this person. I don't know if he's necessarily gonna be the main coach going around about the IGLing of this team. I think now you're really putting it into the reins of Dazed. Now that you have AZK that kind of like stepped down with Fraud, because AZK also has in-game leadership experience, right? But now you're bringing in Automatic. I think this is great. Automatic is a great addition to this team because he's another one of those CSGO major winners with Skadoodle, right? So it's nice to see that he's able to continue forward. He's able to work with Skadoodle again. They have the winning mentality and attitude there. But who's going to play as the fifth player, right? So the rumors are that it's Curry. And Curry, like I said before, it comes from Triumph, and he's one of those players that were up and coming, super young right now. I think only 18 years old. So if he's going to be joining T1 and he's playing with a bunch of players that have like a CS background experience with these other three players outside of Spider, then that could help him in terms of helping the team and grow and get some success. But the overarching question or the elephant in the room is like, how did this all happen? How did this all come together?
Yo. Okay, Curry joining this roster, that sounds kind of spicy, but nothing hits your palate. Nothing hits your palate. Like motherfucking Brax. Brax is not a prodigy. He's been nicknamed the prodigy. He is special. T1 took a fucking hit. Van Silly, you know what? Van Silly's a great guy. He looks for the good and everything, but me, I'm fucking Kermit with the fucking hoodie, right?
Yeah, you down bad
You
right
look
now.
at T1. You look at T1, and it's like, yo, what the fuck? This was the biggest team that first joined Valorant. They slacked. They were on the comeback, right? Skadeezy, he got good with the op. He switched to Jet. Things are looking good. They flopped again, right? Now this team change happened. Why is Brax gone? I'm going to be honest. Top two ciphers, in my opinion. Take a look at a Proto. You take a look at Brax. Brax is the deadliest cipher in the game. And now he's been unleashed. He's a free agent. Who's going to pick him up? And how is T1 going to overcome a huge loss? Losing a phenomenal player like him. He could play, he could turn on the site, he could be aggressive, he can opt, he could do whatever it takes to help his team win. And now they're going to be missing such a huge piece from this roster. And the thing is, them losing him isn't like Cloud9 losing Tens. Brax played along well with this team. He worked with their system. Now that's gone. You're going to have to find that somewhere else, man. That's going to be scary to me, and that's going to be the overarching storyline, in my opinion.
Well, even then, Brax, before he actually left, and it was announced yesterday, he was actually playing Jet during the VCT Open qualifiers with T1. So they even had a change in rosters and experiencing a different type of flow and play style for this team. And it's only been a week, maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah,
going to bring practice in that Brax was playing Jet. So there has to be something else, not necessarily that's within their results, but something more internal.
Can we address the elephant in the room here?
do it.
Don't you think that this departure is a little auspicious, especially in the wake of Fraud leaving this team?
It's political.
Yes.
It's
I mean,
political.
Fraud leaves the team. Friggin', 6'2" Yoda comes in as head coach, and so I don't mean to be disrespectful.
Back up.
I'm just trying. I just trying.
Wait, Uber,
Sure.
back up though. But talk about like all of the team changes T1 has gone through now. What's happening?
Well, okay. Here's I know the people at T1. I know. I definitely know what they were trying to create when this roster was first put together. Let's be honest here. Extending the olive branch to previously scorned players, who were banned in Counter-Strike, and it's a great story, right? It really is. But Fraud literally cites ethical differences with the management of T1 departing that team. Let's not forget that this T1 organization has had their problems with management in the past. You don't have to think back too far to think about the absolute fuckfest that was what happened in League of Legends with this team, and how piss poor management, was definitely to blame with what happened with LS in that situation, and allowing a rabid Korean fan base to completely, ruin someone's life for a time, and then try to make it, and then try to thank the fans or sort of, empower these absolute nut jobs out there to continue behaving this way. Different story in Valorant, a different kind of fan base, but Fraud cites, some real, differences in leaving the team, and you have to wonder. I mean, we kind of saw this with Cloud9, right? One player goes, and then all of a sudden the wheels start to fall off, and the roster starts to look vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
So I 1 week is not really enough time for Brax to sort of find his feet. But I think if you're T1, if you're running things at T1, you're probably thinking, fucking hell, we need to get some results now, because we are in the midst of, the Champions Tour. And if we miss out on these Challengers qualifiers, we are going to be sitting on the outside looking in for some of the major Valorant competitions as the year ramps up. Remember how we're talking, I reckon we did an episode at the end of December, right? We're talking about how teams have some time, things haven't ramped up yet, there's a whole break. Some teams didn't retool during that break or thought they were fine, and now reality hits fucking hard, and they have to come up with an answer really quickly. Someone like Automatic feels plug and play. That motherfucker was the Boston Major winner in 2018.
Exactly.
ESL Pro League Season 4. That guy's got like $500,000 of prize winnings just from Counter-Strike alone. So you know that he's gonna, give you some plug and play value. But hey, Renegades just got rid of a player. You know what I mean? Bergie's left that roster. That's a 4-man roster right now. There's plenty of teams ranked, I don't know, 10
you
to
got some
30.
good building blocks on Renegades.
That could make use of this team.
Yeah, so rumors right now, if we're going to continue on the rumor mill, is for
Sure.
Renegades, it should be Roy. So Strong Legs, Mel's boyfriend, that's going to be the fifth player.
I did see him tweeting that he signed.
Yeah, because he put like the bird, and then he put the cowboy hat, and you could put like 2 and 2 together. Actually, if you want to be more Reddit detective, you could go to battlefly.com and check out all the teams that are registered currently for VCT Open Qualifiers number 2, and Strong Legs is in that roster for Renegades. But
fucking hell, man, get a life.
Listen, I don't watch VODs 24/7 like Sideshow, but I do my fucking Reddit detective stuff too.
Wait.
Go ahead,
I was gonna say I do this all the time in Vancouver. You've heard me do some dumb shit like this. I always have fantasy rosters that I always love to make, right?
Yeah.
And I always think, if you're a great player, why not team with another fucking great player, right? This shit only makes sense. If I'm Brax and AZK, you know who I'm calling right now?
Who you calling?
I'm calling.
Don't say
Tens.
United.
No, that United. But the question is now, like, you take a look at all these rosters, Renegades. You look at teams that are failing to qualify right now, and you say, hey, You know,
Complexity.
complexity. NRG could definitely get better. You know, these teams they could definitely use some strong pieces, man. I feel like roster mania, the shuffle, is gonna be sexy.
Look, and even for me, if I want to continue like the rumor mills, if you're thinking about fraud and how tight he was with Brax and AZK, if again you're
Oh.
doing the Reddit detective and you're looking at what's going on in the qualifiers and who signed up, you currently have fraud signed with Beast Coast. So is he going to be coaching Beast Coast in that roster right now? Beast Coast has been looking for solutions ever since they had a great run during the Pulse. Fuck, let's not mention that name. But during that past event where it was Beast Coast and the coming up of LG, the coming up of other tier 2 teams. So that was really cool for Beast Coast to bring in fraud. And if they bring those two players for AZK and Brax, they'll be great too. But
Sure.
to get back on that T1 topic, what I do like as well is thinking about it from, because, you know, as Veli said, I'm the positive guy too, looking at it from a business perspective. I've watched an interview of Gunba with Dustin Borman, and Gunba was saying, like, you know, it was an old mentality when it was about CS players coming in as a whole and finding a coach, and then if the coach didn't work too well, then you kick the coach and you find another coach and you find another coach. But sometimes it's not always about the players too. The coach kind of has to have that role of being like, I'm going to be the one that's going to be moving the pieces right now, and my players have to be the ones that are able to adapt with other players too. You can't play with your friends. We're playing to win. If you want to play the win, this is where you have to play in this roster.
Wow.
So if it comes down to that too, maybe there's that discrepancy for the vision that AZK and Brax has versus what Daze and Skadoodle has with Spider. And now you're bringing in other players that want to come in to win no matter who they want to play with, and why we have Automatic and potentially Curry coming in too.
I mean,
rough.
easy to say if you're Gunber and you produce 3 top class Valorant rosters in like as many months. Like, you probably have the management of Immortals telling him to do whatever the fuck he wants, right?
Yeah,
He gets
true.
an up launch, but I know that there will probably still be plenty of teams that sort of land the blame on the coach
Mhm,
first.
mhm.
But anyway, yeah, so we'll see what AZK and Brax make happen. I've always kind of expected them as a package deal. I mean, I remember AZK's stint as a McCree main on Team Liquid in Overwatch. That was a fine experience. But so T1 from here, though, you sort of teased a little bit, Vancilli, about Curry. I don't know much about that particular player. I do know, obviously, what Automatic's going to add to a roster. Will it be the Kuster effect, where it's like a fairly quiet entrance, you know, plays a sentinel and just does his job and looks pretty good? You know, still maybe gets outplayed by guys like a Proto and stuff like that, or maybe he comes in with a bang straight off. But
Hopefully
there's
it's
a lot
bang,
of work to be
man.
done, and I am curious. Like, I
Yeah.
am curious. Jokes aside, I am very curious to see how a different structure sort of affects T1, because from what I can tell, and this is not a diss, like you can tell when I'm dissing the coach of T1. This is not a diss. I'm interested to see what his expertise is in terms of Valorant, or if he very much just deals with the behavioral science and sort of the mental coaching part of it, which is something, by the way, that I think is extremely important, especially in an online environment. I think where like your conditions are a little bit more controllable. That's a great time to actually instill some sort of structure and heuristic in terms of how, you know, players approach the game. And if they're young and coachable enough, malleable, so to speak, then you can do a lot of work with that. I really do believe in, with the exception of that Weldon guy in League of Legends, I generally do believe in the ability of behavioral coaches to make a big impact on players and improve results. So maybe Daze gets freed up a bit more. Maybe Frod had too many strong opinions.
Yo, I just thought about this, yo. Put Brax on a team like motherfucking Andbox. Can you imagine that, Vans? Can you imagine that?
I don't know, man, because now if you're putting, like I said, Brax is currently playing Jet. You're gonna put him in an Andbox where potentially that has to replace Ye or
It's not a
Andrew
Ye
out of
state.
this position,
Yeah.
which will be
I
tough.
feel like
but
you could put Brax in different places, though, man. I don't think you can put Brax in one box. You can't put him in one category.
I mean, if you put him back as a Cypher, who does he replace for Andbox? Is it
Seb.
Push? Who's their Sentinel again?
Yeah, but then he'd also have to play the
Yeah.
he'd
Viper.
also have to play the Viper as well.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Lots of theory crafting, but
Yes.
nonetheless, I'm still excited, as you mentioned, guys, and especially you, Mitch, about the roster or agent composition for T1. Once we're gonna get into the VCT Open Qualifiers number 2, who is gonna play what? And so far, every time we had a big name switching from CS, like a huge name switching from CS into Valorant, I've never seen them come in and it's like, oh, I'm gonna play Duelist. It's just like, oh, you're gonna be a Sentinel, oh, you're gonna be a controller, because you still have to learn like the mechanics of the game. I'd love to see Automatic just fucking come in and be like a Phoenix or Arena and just fucking pop up.
Yeah. I just want to watch. Hey, Automatic. Yeah, here's the stinger. It's fucking busted. Go.
Just
Yeah.
go.
Here's
Slap
a
him,
frenzy.
slap him on the ass. Get out there, son. Do some damage.
Think about this frenzy as a CZ75 for this pistol round. Just fucking go, and then we're good to go.
All right.
That's how it
All
works.
right. Let's carry on here a little bit. That's to wrap up some of our roster news
Yes.
from the week so far. Okay, so you know how we were talking earlier in the show about like how you kind of have to be crazy to be able to cover multiple regions.
Yes.
Belly is so contrarian that he has completely ignored North American and European Valorant and is just fucking watching Brazil. So we have a really great opportunity here to hear from, you know what? I think we'll call him an expert. I think you're an expert on the Brazilian region, Belly. So why don't you light us up here and educate us? Because obviously this is a region which has always been stacked with talent, but is always
Yes.
chronically underrepresented in English-speaking broadcasts.
So if any of you guys have never watched Brazilian Valorant ever before in your life, it is everything you've ever imagined that would be Brazilian Valorant. These guys can fucking frag out. They're aggressive. They're fast and heavy. So we have some B-roll film because we have some big matches happening for the VCT. Now, you take a look at First Strike. You had teams like Game Landers winning. You had other rosters just dominating. But this time around, it's like NA. You have these underdogs really coming out the woodworks and just dominating just about everyone out there. So there's a team that's on top right now. They're called Furia. They are basically the brand new God Squad. 6 maps played, none lost. They have nothing but 60-50% win rates on maps. Their map pool isn't that deep, but it doesn't have to be that deep if you're dominating every single series, right? Furia, they led the way. You had Slick right behind them. But you know what? I really want to point all eyes to Fury because right now they are the Vision Strikers. They are what, the XG2. They were the TSM whenever TSM was on top of Latin America, but Brazil. And the reason why, Zand and NZR, they're my two fave. Take a look at round 16 when they were playing. I believe it was Haven against Slick. They were incredible. Now the way that Zand plays, he's gonna be their jet main. Now, you guys remember KZ from Luminosity, right? How he would always just mad dash in the site to always initiate fights, and he wasn't scared of anything. He does that, but not only that, he
You mean
executes.
Kasha?
Yeah, Kasha. Yeah,
Shai.
whatever that Polish stuff means, you know what I'm saying?
His name?
That shit sounds, it's difficult, okay? But the thing is, not only does he rush in, but he executes like 10. So he rushes in like Kasha, he executes like 10s. But the thing is, it's not only that, but the rest of his teammates are going to be behind him to always get the refrags, mostly in ZR. He's going to be their Sova. He is so damn good when it comes to utility. It's insane. I saw them have a take on A, where he was all the way in the back at B, while his teammates were clearing out sight. Recon, shock darts, killing people. He does whatever it takes from a distance, and it doesn't even matter. Furia are on top. They beat the First Strike champions. They're dominant. They're undefeated. If you guys have never watched Brazilian Valorant before, now is the time. And if you want me to basically compare them to what we see in NA and EU, I'm going to say their flavor is heavily like NA. They don't have a lot of utility play like EU. But if I were to say that Furia were to compete in NA, just to give you guys a measurement, a hypothetical measurement.
Give me a ballpark.
I'm going to be completely fucking honest. I think they'll get top 3. Top 2. Maybe.
Excuse me?
The Fury is
Really?
really good. Their utility play is not good like that. I will say that. But you take a look at success from teams like Sentinels and TSM, and when you bring that type of fire, they bring it more. They bring it more because everybody frags out. They're actually fucking insane.
Are we talking like a better FaZe clan then?
Everybody's better than FaZe Clan, but even
Oh,
Vikings.
God.
I mean, even
Okay.
Vikings.
Taking a
I
step
just
away
mean
from
in
that one.
terms of like,
I'm playing. I love FaZe Clan. They're
I
know
want
what?
to know, Valley. You mean in terms of you talk about Fury as a team that maybe doesn't lean heavily into execute set plays and utility.
Oh,
right?
the
You just
executes
sort
are
of-
there. They lean
Okay.
heavily into that. But you know what their executes are like? It's like, you know what we're gonna fucking do, but try to stop it. Like literally their executes. So the best way to describe it, remember on Ascent, whenever Tims would go into A, he'd throw like 2 smokes and then just dive in, and the Raze name would come behind him, and it's up to Tims. He works the knives, try to get kills. No, this guy, he does the same thing just about every single fucking time. I'm talking about Zan still. He would dash in and he would jump on the closest box, and everyone knows it's coming. And he always gets the instant kill, whether it's a Spectre, Stinger, rifle, whatever it takes. They're so explosive on executes, they don't stall, which makes them that much deadlier. They're always in your face. And not only that, even on defense, when it comes to clearing, making sure that no one's in an area, they push on defense. It's actually insane. They want
Okay.
to fight you, so you can't run from them. So if you guys can, make sure you watch the second VCT now. So what happened in the first VCT to kind of close this out? The underdogs and the new God Squad, they qualified, right? The second one, you're going to see a lot of these teams from First Strike try to earn their spot back. So it's going to be a brawl, and the commentary is actually really exciting. Even though I don't understand what the hell they say, they make it extremely fun. It's big plays all around.
That makes sense. I actually, because when I'm looking at this bracket right now, like, where is Game Landers in here? If they've been so high up and First Strike and everything too.
Game Landers?
Sorry?
Oh, Game Landers?
Yeah.
Oh, they got destroyed.
Like,
so
they
Game
didn't even
Landers
qualify,
went
right? So
You know why they didn't qualify? I missed it. Game Landers didn't qualify because Furia beat the shit out of them. They beat them with a clean 2-0. But it's not only that. Hold on, I have it in my notes actually. The first map, I believe Furia went on a 6 out of 7 round spree on the second half of split to close the map. The next map, way closer than that. But you know what they did? They won 7 out of 10 rounds to close out that map as well. When this team goes on attack, there is nothing you can do about it. On defense, yeah, they're kind of like, 100 Thieves at times when we saw First Strike. Just, they were okay. They were just, holding on. But once they went on attack, once they swapped to their good side, we're talking about just about a 70% win rate on their best maps. So don't even think about taking them to a cent. Those guys are filthy.
So I hear about how aggressive BR scene is. So I'm looking forward to checking it out. Hopefully I'll find that time to watch some, some Brazilian.
I try and avoid characterizing
better renegades.
Okay, that's what I saw in chat as well. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. I try not to
Shout out to
characterize
Kat.
this scene based on purely their origin, but I've actually witnessed this in multiple esport titles. That Brazilian teams, I cast Battlefield for a while, and it was very much the same. Santos FC had a Battlefield roster, and they won because they had no fucking respect at all.
Yeah.
It is. I don't know.
Actually, sorry, Mitch. Just to add on to that, I do agree with you, because if you're looking at CS right now and you're looking at North American CS and you're looking at team, who else? Fucking Furia. If you're gonna talk about Furia playing aggressive with art, just running around with the AK and dropping hands and popping faces, he's one of those players. So I think now it's just the mentality or the play style that all of these Brazilian teams have in that scene that just bleeds out and seems to catch a lot of teams off guard when they start reaching the international scene. Ravelli, I don't know if it's the same thing when you're watching Brazilian Rainbow Six, or are they as aggressive? Because we know how slow
crazy
that game could be.
Yo, Brazilians, they don't care, man. They don't care. Like, they just run at you. And the funny thing is, someone in the chat, they said, it was Zeraha. He was talking about shotguns. Literally, in Brazilian Valorant, like, if there's a raise, you're most likely going to see a judge and some blast packs. And she's going to fly in the sight to kill you. And she's going to get the kill because they're better than you.
Well, actually, it's also better to do that on Raze than it is on Jet, because on Jet there's actually like a delay on pulling the weapon out after you dash in, whereas on Raze you never put the weapon away when you use the blast pack.
Zan does that still. You know the crazy thing is? Zan has it's his signature, and I said it before. He literally dashes in, jumps up and just gets on the box with like a Spectre and destroys everyone. He always gets the initiating kill.
I mean, this is why
it doesn't seem real, Uber. It's actually fucking insane.
This is why we need global competition. I swear blood just runs hotter in South American in the esports teams. It's always much more fun to see how they sort of compete in the they do it in League of Legends as well, by the way. It seems like every single game. And then you compare that and contrast that with the juxtaposition of like Europe style, which is outside of G2 generally much less puggy, more structured, right? Like we saw obviously much more of the Sage being used there. Korea also very utility focused, very execute sort of centric, and then like a lot of they have a really weird take on like the economically best way to play the game in terms of weapons that they pick up and such. So that's great. That's why Valorant esports has to be global. We need to see how these styles come clashing together.
I think. I think as we sorry, and one more thing,
right.
as we theory craft how all these regions play and stuff like that too, and like we need an international scene, but it's also proven when you're finally at the international scene for all of these other for all these other. I'm choking on my own spit. It happens. All the international scenes for all the other games, who ends up being on top usually too, right? It's not the Korean scene. It's not going to be the Brazilian team. It's usually the European team. So I'm just looking forward for like the EU maybe on top, but who's going to chase after these guys?
Brazil can win an international event, and if they do, it's going to be that Furia team. And I honestly, I recommend everyone out there in the chat, and I'm going to close this up. Make sure you watch them. Watch them when it comes to Masters. This team is actually They're the TSM of Brazil. They're fucking disgusting.
Mm.
No, they really are. They're disrespectful, Uber. You would love them personally. I
Hey,
feel
listen,
like.
that's listen. I appreciate that kind of style in esports. I get really
Yes.
bored of watching teams like Gen G who just sit back and play for retakes. And it's a little bit stale.
Hey,
So,
it looks
Yes.
better at VCTs, by the way. It looked better
yeah,
at VCTs.
it needs work. It feels like 3 months ago. What
Yeah.
am I seeing
Yes.
from them? Well, we'll talk about that later on, actually, because I think that's an interesting topic to dig into a little bit more. Let's move on though. This week, obviously, you know, how do I frame this properly? So obviously, people didn't get paid by Pulse Arena. We've talked about that a fair bit. This obviously was an event that occurred in conjunction with NSG, who obviously provided the services for the tournament, right?
Mhm.
So what we've actually seen recently is that Nerd Street Gamers have, and Van City tweeted this out, have approached the casters, at least the casters that were, and some observers, mind you, that were not paid by Pulse, and they've said we will pay you, and then we will hold or bear the burden of recouping this money ourselves, which is, I mean, it consolidates a large amount of the outstanding money. But this is a huge gesture. I think there's no other way around this. Look,
Yeah.
you know that I'm more than happy to be very critical of Nerd Street Gamers, but this is something that, generally speaking, demonstrates, a real care for the community. So kudos to them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there you go, Sapphire, because Sapphire and Prius were the observers that they had for the event, and to see that they approached them too to pay them back is another big thing. And two of those people that didn't get paid are two people on this show, right? So Veli, myself, we haven't seen that money since that September time. So big thank you for Nursery Gamers for sure for that.
Mhm.
The stint, is it going to be a PR move? Whatever. Who cares? They did a good gesture for the community. I think they think about the community very well. They think about the casting scene.
Why
very
would they
well.
need a
Oh,
PR
I
move,
care.
Van Silly?
You know what?
Why
I
would
care.
they need to?
I care, Van Silly. You know why I care? Because it's to make a fucking statement. You know what I always believe? It doesn't matter, what bad shit you've done in life or whatever. It's all about growth,
Mhm.
learning from it, and getting better, right? Like, let's be completely honest. Like, yeah, a lot of us were upset about, some of the things that happened with Nerd Street Gamers. And it was sad, and rightfully so. Nerd Street Gamers, they turned around. They could have said, you know what? Fuck these guys. They could have Michael Jordan memed it. Fuck these kids. But you know what? Bach slid in my DMs and told me what he was planning to do. And I literally told Bach, I do not want your money for someone else's mistakes. This is a fucking amazing move that you guys are trying to make. And I fucking respect it. But it's not up to you guys. You guys shouldn't take the hit for this. But Bach didn't give a fuck. It wasn't about them losing money. It's about doing what's right. And they not only wanted to do what's right, they wanted to show the community, you know what? We're sorry. We care. Let's make amends. Let's get better. Let's move on. And hopefully the future is better between us and the entire scene. And for them to make a statement like this, shout out to NSG, man.
Yeah,
Gotta show
Yeah.
love.
I
Shows
don't
growth
know.
for sure.
I don't know.
That's
if-
a lot of money they gave out.
I don't know if NSG are apologizing for anything. I think they're I mean, that's not
Make it right.
how it reads to me anyway. I mean, yeah, but it's not their fault that people didn't get paid, right?
It's
Obviously.
not.
right.
So I can say this. I had some really enlightening conversations over the last week or so since our last episode, where I spent 28 minutes ranting about casters. That was kind of insane. I had a great chat with obviously Bok over at NSG, and got an understanding of sort of how they're trying to do things. And I actually have a chance this week to meet with the CEO of Nerd Street Gamers,
Okay.
and have a chat about sort of how they're operating in the Valorant space, how they can maybe improve, and sort of what their plans are in the future. So I do want to take a moment to thank Nerd Street Gamers, because they could quite easily just turn around and be very upset when I told them a new one. But there's a real appetite and willingness there to have a dialogue about how we can all do better in the Valorant esports space. So I will take this opportunity now. I don't take anything that I said back. There was a little performative in some aspects, and I was definitely heated, but I'm really impressed with this very, very warm gesture to a lot of the commentators that were really left sidelined by what happened with the Pulse situation. And it's clear to me, I really want to make it very clear. I do not think that, Nerd Street Games have ever really had negative intentions or nefarious intentions, right? I think perception makes a big difference. And, we've all perceived how they've negotiated the space as a tournament organizer in different ways. And you can see that I had a very strong perception and opinion of them. So good on them. Fuck Pulse Arena though. Fuck those guys. I mean,
Yes.
just big as Nuck fan, actually. Yo. They need to now pay Nerd Street Gamers. They best be getting on that.
I look fucking good as a gangster. I'm not gonna fucking lie.
What am I doing with my hair?
you know what this, you know what this is like to me? Like this is fucking disgusting. This is like another man like paying like your bills, like giving your girl money that she needs. Like
Shit.
how do you allow that? Like fucking have accountability, have responsibility. Like Pulse, they're the cucks in this scenario.
Yeah.
And nursery gamers are the fucking heroes now. They're the fucking big dick Chads. Shout out to them, Pulse. You should be fucking. That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You know what? I don't hate the owner of Pulse. Whatever. You know they should have paid us, but that's actually embarrassing. I hope they get their stuff together soon and pay Pulse back. They need to pay them back,
Yeah, of course. Or Pulse should pay NSG back, but then
or they
also
could pay us again.
Yeah, pay us again, pay NSG back. Just after that, don't come back though.
I just want to make it clear as well. It also it is a consolidation of these outstanding funds, which means that now I think there's there are legal avenues that nursery gamers can take, and it's much easier for them to pursue a lump sum of money
Probably.
for commentators than for commentators individually to have to lawyer up and get the money back. I had this when I worked with ESL. I worked with a particular Lithuanian esports tournament. I should have known tournament organizer that didn't pay. It didn't pay, and fortunately ESL sort of reimbursed me for the money and then went after them with they had obviously a bit more of like a legal backing to do so. So yeah, that's great. Big fan of that.
And just to say, because you were mentioning before, Mitch, like NSG, props to them of what they did, and that it's much needed in the Valorant scene. But I think this is a great example for just esports casting in fucking general. Because as this happened to us, and we talk about how, because you mentioned that question last week, is like, hey, how many times have I taken a cut towards whatever I did? So when I first got back into casting, my rates were pretty low. When I joined BMT as an agency, Bamoon Talent, and then I started having a more respectable rate, those guys for NSG respected it for me. But for other events, there was still little bits of gaps here and there that forced me to bring my stuff down even before joining a BMT. So that's the main issue. It's like, if my rates went up at some point before joining an agency, and I'm still in like a learning space where I'm like, okay, what's the pros and cons of like going with an agency or not? Is it going to be the right thing or not to be able to get my rates respected and stuff like that too? And that's something that I'm still learning as I go.
Well,
but in general, those that don't have the opportunity to currently have a representation for any types of agencies that are trying to get into the scene, those are still the people that could get very much affected by any types of tournament organizer in any game to still get fucked by the pay.
Absolutely. I think it would be much harder if it were, I mean, I'm not calling out a certain group, but a lot of the casters that maybe, worked on like the Winter Championship or the VCT stuff that maybe don't have representation at this time. Like if it happened to them, their sort of options for recourse would be much slimmer. So, the community is very good at self-policing and throwing out these sort of these bad actors, so to speak. So I don't really worry about that happening too much in the future. Just a bit of an update on what I said last week as well. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask for the industry standard rate, which is fine. I've been giving that. If you're asking me what the industry standard rate for broadcasters is just because you're fucking interested or you want to know if it's worth it for you going in and getting the bag, don't reach out to me. A few of you have done that, and there's no reason for me to divulge that information when you're not a commentator or you're not working in the scene. If you are, like, if I have seen that you have been a caster and you're trying to navigate your way through, then that's absolutely something I'm happy to share with you. I mean, I could say the number here on the show, but I don't think that's really necessary at all. Yes, Velly.
Like it doesn't even matter. Like, let's be real. Casting isn't easy, and all these people that think that our jobs are so easy and they want to chase the bag. I mean, good fucking luck. You could tell them that then they're just gonna wind up.
Yeah, I mean,
but challenges.
Yeah, plenty of casters are competing with me quite effectively by charging less. So that is a way to compete. Or a way to make it so I can't compete with them by stifling competition by charging less than half of industry standard rate. That's their decision.
A premier commentator. Come on, y'all.
I mean,
shit,
no, listen. Again, it's a very nuanced issue. Okay, you can't just walk into another scene and be like, give me $5,000 a day. You know what I mean? And you have to understand that VCT also, like, the point I believe is to really unearth some sort of previously or hitherto undiscovered talent when possible. We agreed that maybe, you know, that the Castle Challenge could have gone off a little bit better, but like I perceive VCT as like the current pinnacle of Valorant competition, which it is. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not supposed to be the pinnacle of Valorant competition. It's supposed to be a part of the pathway into Masters and you know, and the rest, right?
Yeah.
So that was obviously the issue with the way some people looked at how castles were selected or paid or whatever, is that it's not champions, it's part of the way in
Which is
there.
valid.
This is something I can expand maybe outside of this show because it's a little bit off topic, but we've got a lot to talk about here as well. I mean, we can still complain. There's plenty of things to complain about because the formats in EU are still fucked. They're still fucked.
I don't know how Uber, like, yo, it has been like 8 months now. 8 months.
Yep.
I don't get this anymore, man. Like, yeah, it's been 8 months. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's been vocal about it. Everybody's been on the same page about it. How we need at least something else than BO1s for EU. And I know it's gonna come later in here too, but there's like one person from Riot in Europe that's like, yeah, it's a missed mark after they tried to come back and like reassess and have like a debriefing meeting about how First Strike went in EU, and like, yeah, we kind of missed the mark on doing BO1s. It won't happen again. But then you're looking at the open qualifiers for VCT Challengers #1 has been BO1s all the way up to like what, round of 16 or round of 32, whatever. And then open qualifiers #2 is the same fucking rules. You're still going BO1s until open 32s. What the fuck is going on?
So yeah, obviously now the qualifiers. So yeah, can we go back to the tweet that David P made, because the tweet's important, but also the response. Now, obviously, yeah. So the qualifier for European Champions Stage 1 was best of ones. Now there weren't. If you look through the bracket, there weren't sort of too many top teams that got kind of screwed out of their positions. Generally speaking, it was okay. I mean, I guess Entropic is one of the teams, but they lost.
Man, they fucking lost to Entropic,
right?
Because of bad seedings and BO1s.
So both Entropic and Team Heretics get sort of knocked out of this. Now, David P's trying to be kind of nice about this. I don't think he feels this way. I think he's just Belgian as fuck. You know, Def says, hey, listen, this is not fair. Like, I don't know, I'm not really sure why that you're sort of trying to make this seem okay. You cannot, especially the way Valorant works, and especially a lot of the, I guess, complaints that teams have had with, you know, trying to achieve some sort of consistency and result in performance. You can't do this. Now, Riot Crower, right? That's your name, yeah? You haven't tweeted since mid-December. I don't need you to be a social media mogul, but you definitely need to speak on this topic. You need to get on Reddit, you need to get on some platform, and you need to explain to people why the fuck this thing that you said was a complete miss and wasn't good is still happening, right? So you said you missed the mark. You said no excuses. I appreciate that kind of candor, but you can't just fucking fade off into the ether after saying that it's really important that we get this right, and then, you know, the exact same mistake is being repeated. So I don't quite understand where the breakdown in communication is occurring. There are angels tweeting that sort of stuff. You see Def tweeting about it. Damon, after Monkey Business win, gets on a fucking live interview, and the first thing he says is, get rid of these best of ones, to Yinsu in this interview. You cannot miss this. It's just like, this is like a bunch of hornets stung you on the face. It's like, you can't hide this, right? This is an issue that needs to be addressed now. And why? I don't understand why this is happening. And this happened back in the LEC. You know, I think there was for a time, it was like, yes, we'll see in NA, we're going to try having best of threes, you know, because, you know, North Americans are used to series. Look at the World Series. Look at basketball. I mean, it's not over after one game. But EU, we're going to give them best of ones in the EU LCS because...
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we're going to see if it works. I mean, and maybe they use a sports analogy to justify that, but you forget that obviously there are a lot of situations in European sports, i.e. football, where you have two legs, right? A home and away leg. But I remember something along that line. Now, I understand this is where you're testing things out, right? We're in a time where we need to sort of sort this shit out. Why the fuck are you going to have best of ones until the round of 8? Like, this is not how you build a region, right? This is not how you develop it.
Yeah.
And if it's Freaks for You, by the way, who I'm familiar with their company and their workings, I still ask, who is not telling them this? Do they not have eyes out there? Can they not afford to run best of threes? Is their broadcast too constrained?
You know
I
what?
get it.
It's
Yeah.
Go
sorry.
first, Valley. Go ahead.
All right, this is
Why
gonna be
is Riot
short.
deciding this?
I don't know. It's really confusing. We have the same thing happening in Rainbow Six. I'm gonna let you know now. This has happened for about a year now, and people are not happy about the difference of best of one in Europe and best of three in NA, because one region is just way ahead of Europe right now, and it's gonna be the one with the best of three. But now this is where shit gets scary, right? And you're gonna have to think logically about this and think realistically. We can't put on like our blinders to this. There's a realistic scenario where G2 might not even make it to the big stage for Masters. They can lose another best of one. And now you have your biggest org in Europe missing out. Because the best of one.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in the best one, and that's the scary thing about it. But Vans, go ahead, man. It's
Yeah.
upsetting.
So yeah, no, definitely. The first thing I want to say is that disclaimer that we saw from the Reddit thread from Crower, because it said 2 days ago, but the thing is, it's just because it was a repost. So that post actually came
Last
out
year.
like last year, coming out of First Strike. So again, they looked at First Strike, they see how everything went in NA, how everything went in EU and all the other regions, and then like, yeah, we missed the mark on BO1s. Now they're still doing it. Now in Europe, they also have 256 teams. So
That's twice NA. That's twice NA, right?
it's twice than NA. NA has 128, EU has 256, which maybe could be one of the factors as to why you want to bring it down a little bit too. Yeah, I mean, best of twos or whatever, but at least like it doesn't necessarily need to add more into manual labor, maybe in admins if it comes down to like
That shit's
BO3s or something like
automated
that,
half the time.
Yes.
Like the Battlefy platforms and such are fucking fully automated. You know what I mean?
To it,
It's
man.
been happening for years.
So you're not missing out on much, and if it's going to be disputes and stuff like that too, I don't think it happens quite often from experience and hanging out in discords where you have captains meeting and stuff like that too. Like it doesn't happen as much, except when Guild got disqualified. That's another.
Hey
story for
Vance,
First Strike.
Vance, do me a favor. Slap your Android phone real quick. Is blurry.
Oh.
I'm talking about the webcam.
I don't know. I think it's just my connection, but I mean that could be one thing. But I gotta say that definitely they're missing the mark on something here to just continue to have BO1s. It's quite frustrating to think about at that point.
Why are we not hearing anything from Riot about this? Like, please,
Yeah,
like,
so-
It's
come
hard
on,
to
just
develop like talent
Yeah,
and real
and-
storylines.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about too was the this whole format kind of thing is as to when Lothar and Ryan were saying, hey, they don't have any say or word as
it's
Freaks
Riot,
for You.
yeah.
So I guess Freaks for You, they were just a production company to be able to broadcast this, but there's got to be some tournament organizer if it's not Riot, right? Because if I know, if I stand, I could stand corrected, but I think I'm right when I say for First Strike, for example, when we wanted to have formats and we wanted to have RFP, so people bidding to be able to produce First Strike in North America for the qualifiers. So we're talking about UMG and for NSG. If you've noticed, for NSG, they've only had one bracket, 128 teams, best out of 3 all the way. But UMG decided to run 2 qualifiers. So it's not necessarily right in North America that had the say. They had the final say, but the final say / stamp of approval for what the production company / TO wanted to come out with for the format and how it should be played out, at least in their eyes, and they approved it. So somebody is doing something in EU where Riot EU has the final stamp. But who's doing that right now to say BO1s is the way, and who's the one that's stamping to say that BO1 is correct?
Well,
That's where it needs to be worked on and fixed.
Look, I'll be honest, it's probably Riot because I worked for a TO for years.
Yeah.
I worked for ESL full time, and I saw behind the curtain at how the tender process works, how RFP works, how talent acquisition works, how developer liaison works, all of that stuff. I was in the meetings for a lot of these things. Back then, obviously, that was at the time when Riot was slowly bringing all of their League of Legends operations in-house. So that was just a really tumultuous and weird time anyway, because the LCS used to run out of the ESL studio in Cologne before they moved to Berlin. I think it's someone at Riot. I don't get me wrong. Freaks for You have the capacity for a full service, right? They're a full service esports company. They're definitely running it all. There's no doubt about that. I don't think they're splitting the load with anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, I would just like a rationale for this. Like, it's just not hard. I think the amount of people that you can maybe placate by just explaining this a little bit more would be really good. I don't know You know, I speak more with the Riot Europe guys than I do with NA. You know, they're not that hard to get in touch with for me. I don't really know why there's been a radio silence that's been maintained about this issue. Maybe they forgot. Maybe
this is where we need you again.
no,
We need you,
Call
Uber.
him out,
I'm
message
sick-
to them, and figure it out.
Production, put up the counter right now. 5 minutes. Uber rants.
I'm sick of having to say provocative shit to get the attention of people in power.
Can we
Like,
just
why the
all be
fuck?
civil?
Yeah, like why can't they just do their due diligence instead of me having to sit here and like use a bunch of frankly like nasty ad hominem and just really obtuse ways of painting them as the enemy when they're maybe not really,
You
you know.
don't want to.
Oh, shit, man, I
You
don't
want
know.
to
Look,
love them so
Okay.
much.
Now, just to add salt to the wound or whatever that
Uh-oh.
fucking saying is, but like, shout out to Pat is doing stuff and Ian in the chat too, because the tweet came out now. Because I remember seeing it, but I forgot who said it. Now it's from Caesar. That if there's more than 256 teams, right, as we mentioned that there probably is for the Open
Yeah.
Qualifier number 2,
day
it's
one.
gonna be
Yeah.
BO1s to round 6, which potentially could be BO1 to top 8.
Oh.
It doesn't matter at that point.
Okay, can you at least make a double elim? Can we? Is
No,
there not like
apparently
a
not.
middle ground?
It
Apparently
doesn't
fucking not.
matter at that point. That is
that's it.
scary.
That's it. Because you're going to have, as I just mentioned before, potentially another series where it's going to be Heretics versus Entropic, and it's going to be a BO1 where one of these teams, because of, again, if anything, how do you determine correct seeding? You have 256 teams playing BO1s into round of 16, round of 8s, where how are you going to have that knowledge, having this game that's so new, to be able to seed them correctly so that the bracket makes sense at some point?
Can you imagine a premier organization and team and possibly G2 not making it?
Jesus
That is
Christ.
insane. And the fact that they're doing that at top 8, at least top 16. Please, at least that.
Because if you're looking at it now, like the teams that have to requalify from the top 8, sorry if we're skipping ahead in the schedule, but G2 has to requalify. Guild Esports has to
Yes.
Fnatic, Liquid, and then you have Heretics.
Oh my
Entropic.
God.
Entropic, and
Wow.
all these teams like Heats, all these new like Vitality that just got
I'm
picked up,
stressed.
right? So the OG team, there's 8 teams right there that I've mentioned where there's
The
a
OG
potential-
team are through.
Are they through?
Yeah, OG.
Oh, yeah, it's my
OG
OG, sorry.
won. They went through, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, 7 teams that I've mentioned then that didn't make it through, and they have to requalify, very similar to NA right now, where you don't have the TSMs and everything too, but at least we have fucking BO3s.
Yo.
Yeah, but still, people like T100 Thieves and TSM still get knocked out in best of 3s. So there is a small
And that's
other side.
justified though, right? At that point,
That's
it's justified.
NA, the best of 3, the competition, like everything we're seeing in NA, like TSM lost, and it made complete sense to me.
They lost to Xset.
Yes.
It's
makes
a team
sense.
that we're going
That
to
might
mention
make
is-
sense. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. It makes sense for these losses sometimes. Not the 100 Thieves one, but at the same time, at least they had a BO3.
That makes sense too. You know what I'm saying? Like, come
Yeah.
on.
I want to.
Come on, Europe.
I don't know other podcasts. I don't know if they're doing this. Can I just please call other podcasts out? Can you please assist us in trying to apply pressure on these tournament organizers or on Riot to at least just tell us what the hell's going on? All right, not trying to get paid by Riot in 6 months' time and start doing the right thing. Let's go. Let's make it happen. I want to know why this is happening for the sake of the fucking thousands of players that have to qualify under these conditions. For the love of God, please.
I have an idea. At the beginning of every major podcast in Valorant, we should all open with the segment about getting rid of best of ones in Europe. And we should all do it. We should do it at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and just fucking meme it until it's fucking gone. We
I'm
need to
a
come
re-
together as a family. We are the power of Valorant. We hold the power here. We're the people.
I mean, yeah, we're the Planeteers. You can be one too, but I don't really.
I try.
I don't need them just to fucking abolish best of ones. What I'd love is to begin a conversation about why this is happening. Give me some rationale. You know, Evermore, who works for Riot NA, is fantastic at this. Obviously, the guys must have some time, or he's spending some time specifically to talk to people about why their ranked games are so shit. Why is it so hard to have someone go, hey, there's a reason why we're working with best of one, even if there isn't shit. I mean, God, you could at least start the conversation about it. I think the really important part in in a burgeoning esports scene is to give the teams that are spending hours and hours and hours playing, preparing for these matches, some sense of agency, some sense of ownership, because they are stakeholders. All right. Teams like Heretics are stakeholders in Valorant esports. They're August spent money, they spent time, like it or not, right? They own part of this as well. And I think that they deserve to understand your direction, your decision making, because it directly affects them and their livelihoods, because they're professional gamers. There has to be a partnership here between the developers and the tournament organizers and the players, because without a great sense of communication through all three of these, you don't have a functional scene. You have a lot of drama, bullshit, misinformation on Twitter, and everyone looking from the outside in thinks you're a joke. Trust me, I've worked on the Overwatch League. I worked on the Overwatch for so long. I've seen what these broken down relationships can do, not only to the league itself, but the perception from the outside. Okay, sort it out.
And what I've learned from when I've worked in corporations and sales and stuff like that too is like when things are not working out, or there's a clash between the employees and like direction of management and stuff like that too. A management now is finally more open to say why, right? The biggest question is why, and you want to answer that why. And maybe it might make some employees frustrated, but at the same time, you're going to have some employees that are going to be critically thinking about the ways to find a solution to make sure that both of these areas from top to bottom kind of like aligns with each other. So I'm not saying that the person that has to justify the why has to be making a public statement to let everybody on Reddit know, and then that's just going to add more fuel to the fire. But if you have the right channels and start communicating the whys and to back things and bring some other people in that can maybe help out to like find these solutions, then let's do it. Because right now the biggest question, or the easiest thing, or the easiest answer is to say, well, just switch it to fucking BO3. What's the issue there? There's got to be a reason why they cannot do BO1 or BO3s rather. And what is that reason? And how can we make it better so that we both could actually agree to some sort of common ground or solution?
Yep. Yeah, I think we're just advocating for conversation around the issue. Speaking of which, I mean, there's plenty of conversation. A lot of the time, the conversations on this show are one-sided. It's not called Valoranting for nothing. And we'll be back after the break talking more VCT action with a special guest, RyanCentral. So don't go too far. Take a deep breath, unrustle your jimmies, and we'll see you in a couple moments. Thank you for sticking with us after the break, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Valoranting, a professional ranting show, not podcast. It's a show. The big distinction is that we're in our own little boxes, and there's actually people. Actually, I don't know what the difference is. Anyway, welcome back. I'm Mitch Lacey here with Vansili and Veli. So far today, we've discussed a whole bunch of stuff, roster moves in NA and EU. We talked a lot about formats, but now it's time to sink our teeth a little bit more into what has been happening across the pond. We're talking VCT, and to help us with that, it is going to be the one, the only RyanCentral. He's named like that because he is the one-stop shop for all things Ryan, and he knows a fair bit about Valorant as well. Welcome, buddy.
What's up, Ryan?
That was the weirdest intro I've ever
You're the one that's called RyanCentral. Who put Central after their first name?
It's a literal terrible username. I can accept that. I thought you were just going to say he's called that because his name is literally Ryan and he has no creative ideas. So there we go. Great start. I'm doing good though. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, likewise, man. I mean,
Likewise.
for those that don't know, Ryan has been a content creator first and foremost, then also a broadcaster in esports for a while. He and I think, what, guys, 2015, spun up Overwatch content creation, and I sort of diverged away from that. He stuck with it, and now obviously is a broadcaster in Valorant and a content creator, of course, with his Ken. Mate, for those that maybe don't know much about your background, feel free to add some on there and tell us what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, we started the channels within the same week, I think, back then as well, because you were doing stuff with ESL with Overdrive and stuff, and yeah, that scared the living shit out of me at that point, because I think one amongst many said the same thing, because he saw like the big studio setup that you guys had, and he was like, "Oh shit, this is gonna."
We got lucky because we had this decrepit studio upstairs with no aircon, where we were able to do, like, me and Jason were able to sit down and just honestly, there was no substance to any of the content that we created, but we wanted to establish a presence in Overwatch, and yeah, obviously we took a lot of cues from guys like Ryan and OAM who actually knew how to create content.
Yeah, that was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. 5 years of making Overwatch content. We rebranded to HitScan just before BlizzCon of last year. because truth be told, we had no idea what Overwatch 2 was going to be. We didn't know if it was going to be a new game. We didn't know if we wanted to be like Overwatch and Talon Central, right? So we were like, let's just get rid of it because we're kind of shoehorning ourselves into doing one channel. So a hit scan, we might as well be called Valorant Central at this point, to be brutally honest. So that's how
I was going to say,
going.
even in 2021, you don't even know when Overwatch 2 is coming out. So
right. I feel so bad for people like Stylosa and stuff because they very much stick to their guns. And I think we'd go back to Overwatch at some point making content, but not anytime soon, because when it comes to the C word content, there really isn't that much at the moment, but that's fine. Valorant's doing fine. And yeah, basically we got invited to the closed beta and all that stuff from doing hit scan. And I figured, I think I spoke to you about this as well, Mitch, where it's like, I didn't cast any Overwatch in the early days because I was almost like too scared to, because I was still very new to like making content and stuff. Sure. I didn't want to make that mistake again the second time around, because I remember meeting Mitch properly at the start of the Overwatch League and you being like, we need casters in the future. And there's been plenty since in the Overwatch League, but there's a huge like traffic jam, a backlog of people waiting for their chance to be part of the league, right? So I figured there's no chance, got to do some stuff in tier 2 and like China and stuff, and that was all great. But yeah, when the Overwatch, when Valorant closed beta came out, I was casting talents 3 days into the closed beta, and tried to stick with Europe as much as I can. But not only have the First Strike and VCT formats been tough, but Ignition series as well has been insanely competitive with talent, all of the agencies coming in way back when as well. So it's been a grind, but I got a chance in North America, which I then lost straight away again at the start of this year. So it's been a roller coaster.
Let's circle back to this, Ryan. Can we circle back? Obviously, you were a name that I sort of brought up last week when we discussed region locking, right? And that you had some success, obviously, casting North America. Now, this is a decision that we've seen now with VCT and region locking that directly affects you as a caster based in Europe, not casting European Valorant.
Right. To give context, I don't mind revealing this as well. In January, I worked 6 days, which, for the rates that we've been discussing, I was on those rates, and that's a good amount of work, right? Doing the Winter Championship and then 2 days for Red Bull, who I fought for to get Simo in casted, to get a producer, and to get us all paid. Like, I put in the effort to make sure that happened, right? Because they wanted those open qualifiers broadcasted. I have not casted anything in February. I am not down to cast anything in February. I've gone from, making effectively full time's wage doing casting to not making anything at all, just based off this decision. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm like shoehorned in or should be doing VCT in North America, but considering like what I've done for First Strike with Nerd Street and stuff in the past, I think it does a better shout for me doing North American VCT than Europe, because Europe not only is stacked with talent, don't get me wrong, but there's not a B stream. A lot of these games aren't even broadcasted. And even then, when they have that talent, it's always like, you look at something like Nerd Street Gamers, how many people do you think they employed overall, Vansili? Like 12 people?
Yeah.
Something like that. And it's 5 in Europe.
And even then, as much as we kind of like critiqued about the community caster thing in North America, you guys don't even have that opportunity to do that in Europe to get any type of like exposure for any up and coming casters that wants to get known or wants to be known in Europe.
And now I'm in this position where you sort of mentioned it with Avril last week as well, where I can't cast a lot of events in Europe now because my rates are too high from all of the stuff I've done in North America. So,
which, by the way, isn't that high, right? It's just that you have a respectable floor on your rate and you won't go below it.
It's kind of like we want you to do a full day's work for what you would usually charge for, well, not even a half day. Maybe we want you to do the best of 3 final. This is the rate we'd give you. And you could kind of go, all right, if it's just like a couple of hours work, I can accept that. If you're working out the calculations of, if this is a full day rate, how much is it per hour? Okay, like I've been able to do this stuff with like YouTube and brand deals and integration, so that came kind of naturally. But even then, I think Vansili and I have had discussions, because I think it was you that brought me in to do Pulse for the first time. So thanks for that, Vansili.
That one got paid. that one got paid. That one got paid.
Insane,
like Vansili like helped me with my rate then, and it was a third of what I charge now. I'm not going to go into that specifically, but I remember at that point being like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. And now I'm kind of like, you can't accept that kind of thing. So in short, I am sort of in this weird ground where it sounds horrible, but I'm waiting for like a chance for like challenges for somebody to like not so much slip up or get booked out for another game in some cases. I don't have the luxury like I did with First Strike, where all right, there's no chance it's going in Europe. I could do North America to earn a bit of money, get a bit of experience, just get those reps in at casting. I can't do that, so I'm just playing with my dick all day, basically watching these scenes like play out. It's heartbreaking. And it also fucks with some of the North American casters as well. Like, because I've been duoing with people like Simo and all that kind of thing. Now they need to find other duos and they're struggling to find the right people. So it's even screwing with people within their own regions.
Yeah,
Ryan, have you heard anything? Sure. Have you heard anything from Riot or EOS that sort of explains this decision? Have you had any sort of information or guidance about why this is happening?
Not really. Bok kind of talked about a couple of things. Like my assumption was they want to do what they did with First Strike in Europe, have it out of a studio, which would be cool, but also that would be for Masters. Clearly that would be for Masters. At which point, if they turned around to me and said, we're going to be doing it out of a North American studio, I'd be like, okay, fine. I never expected to fly there anyway, but to stop me from getting involved in any step of the process when it's all online based off the fact that, oh, we want Masters to be done on a LAN, clearly that's just a bit odd. I get the whole, if they want a franchise, they want to find talent, but again, LEC, how many people are American over there? There's a lot of like counterpoints to all of the reasonable arguments you could make. And so I'm just hoping that they turn it around,
And we're having to make the arguments with ourselves. Like we don't even, we're literally having to create straw men to argue with because we don't actually know what the rationale is for any of this decision making. Something I was just thinking about as well. This just occurred to me, and I don't want to take up any more time to talk about me stuff, but I've heard a lot of commentators are actually taking less money for doing online gigs, right? I just want to make it very clear. Put me in a one box real quickly. I'm ready for my close-up, director. Don't ask for less money just because you're working online. The product of work that you as a commentator have to put out on an online broadcast as opposed to a LAN is the same, if not harder, right? Tournament organizers online already aren't paying for your food. They're not paying for your travel. They're not paying for your accommodation, right? They get you. You have to make sure that you have the right equipment. You have to make sure that your connection's working. You have to handle everything else. And the quality of your work arguably has to be better because you don't have a ton of graphical assets, videos to rely on during the broadcast. You don't have a crowd behind you to back you up. You have to do so much more fill. You have to do so much more prep, and you have to do so much more to make the broadcast pop without all of those elements. So really quickly, just an aside, don't fucking ask for less money just because it's an online broadcast. The quality of your work has to be arguably better. Don't be dumb cunts. All right? All right. Anyway, where were we? Ryan, the reason we actually have you here, obviously, like the discussion about how, obviously how you're affected in Europe, so hopefully something that we can keep having, because I think that it's really important that there's not only accountability, but also that we're open about sort of our situations here. The reality is that not everyone is going to make it, but I'm pretty sure, those that have put in the hard work deserve to see that sort of acknowledged by Riot and by at least, getting an explanation as to how this stuff's going. Yeah, let's talk about Europe though, because, we talked earlier in the show about how it's so hard to watch every scene. You're a grinder. I know you were working in NA, so you had to watch both North America and Europe, but, I wanted to take a chance to, give us like an overarching blurb about what's happening in Europe VCT here, obviously formats aside, and some of your thoughts before we start to dig into some of these individual games.
What's up with G2, Ryan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting, right? Because I think when you look at things like Sentinels and TSM 100 Thieves, I do think that just after First Strike, I think North America was a stronger region. I definitely think that the formats do inhibit Europe to an extent. But the one thing that EU did that NA didn't in some cases was they upgraded. David P left G2, Meadow left FPX. These are both changes that you didn't actually need to see any of these teams make. It was a real surprise, and for a lot of people still, they don't make an awful lot of sense, certainly with that G2 loss. But I think with that game in particular, G2 played a decent game, in all honesty, and NiP just played the living shit out of it, right? You've got everybody showing up. I did a video with like Mitch talking about like who are like the star players of the tournament that we've seen so far, at least. And you've got to look at the 4 teams that qualified. You've got NiP, you've got Wave, of all things. Nobody expected that. Monkey Business, and then you've got FPX. You could name the whole NiP roster because everybody played exceptionally. And I think you really need to look at those players like Chihuahua, who constantly clutched out, Jadi. This was really the only good map from G2. And I think if you watch this back, you really get a handle on how these guys play, because G2 are just massive bullies. You can't play passively against them if you're defending, because they will just take that space for free. But they will use utility in such a way that they force you to take a fight against them. And a lot of those fights, they just tend to win because they're mechanically better. In this case, Nip took those fights, and Nip won those fights time and time again because they're exceptionally nutty when it comes to their aim. I don't think Zeke played particularly well in those kind of areas, but in all honesty, this was just another great performance from Nip. If they had to play this best of 3 again, I'm pretty sure it would have gone differently. I'm still sold on the fact that G2 is the best team in Europe, but the competition level is so high now, especially with Nip performing at the moment, that anybody could take it. The real thing that we needed was double elim, because if we had double elim, G2 would have qualified over like Monkey Business or whoever the hell else.
Wait. But for storyline purposes, what if G2 didn't qualify and they lost again? Do you see like how a best of 3 double elim actually adds way more to that story?
Right, exactly. Like it adds a sense of consistency because
it's reading a fucking 5-page picture book as opposed to a novel, because there's more content. There's actually more to watch.
It's depth of character, isn't it, really, if they come back? Like, look at Sentinels. They wouldn't be able to do what they did. They would have got knocked out. I think it was Sideshot that said they would have got knocked out to Serenity before they got to the closed qualifiers, because it was a best of 1,
They're out.
And so, you need to see those teams come back, because you had the whole literal anime storyline of Shazam losing his mind on stream and then coming back and having his team full int the way to win in the grand final. That's how it went.
It's a fucking great story, actually, for that.
Exactly, right? But what you have for G2, sorry, you got to try again, but this time it's much worse. I can imagine at a point with all of this, and, I think I'm in a position where I want to be careful what I say, because there's been loads of examples in the past where somebody has criticized something and then never got to work with a TO again in some cases. But I do think that if this continues to happen, if we don't see G2 go through, what is Carlos going to do? He's going to go straight to Riot and go, what the hell is this? We are going to, if you're going to franchise, we are going to buy into that, and I don't like what I see so far. Like, it's a great indication for what's coming, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean. I thought you were done with the long pause. I just want to make it just perfectly clear. We shouldn't be afraid to say best of 1s are pretty much a detriment to competitive integrity and storylines and the betterment of Valorant. Us speaking out about it doesn't make us negative. It doesn't make us bad guys. We only want what's better for the scene, and I
care about the scene.
Exactly, and I legitimately hope that anyone from Riot, from the EU side, if they're watching, I hope that they don't look at it like, look at these assholes telling us how to do our job. I want them to be like, look at these assholes. They actually have kind of a point. Let's think about this and make Valorant better. But go ahead, Ryan, man. That was
It's
fun.
just like nothing sums it up better than what Sliggy said, where a better format and a better system in place for broadcast helps out literally everybody. It gives people opportunities to be on broadcast. And, when you look at the track record for Europe as well, when it comes to talent, which you have to, Pansy Hypok, definitely fair enough. Mitch, definitely fair enough with the amount he did for Ignition. Banks is a whole nother story. But then you got Yinsu, who, as well as been making a lot of great content in there, deserve to host the event. But then you've got Jonas and Lofar, and I love these two guys, and I think they make some really good content. But what does that say if you've been like a caster in the scene covering Europe, and you want to cover Europe, and content creators get it over you, and they're not necessarily clued? Like, if you're on an analyst desk as well, you need to know the teams and the players and stuff. And so, like, again, it's one of those things where I didn't expect to be doing First Strike at all. And so I saw this and I was kind of like, well, like, Riot don't owe me anything,
Yeah.
But it does put you in a position where it's kind of like, what else can I do when this situation is like playing out in front of you? And even as a content creator, right? Like, I could try and leverage hitscan. I try not to, because I'd like to think that I would get on a broadcast off my own back and skills, as opposed to look at this massive fucking YouTube channel I have, right? Like, nobody wants to be that guy, but that's just kind of like broadcast and talent in 2021 and 2020.
Yes, it is. It is. I also think that, as an aside, I think that sometimes esports broadcast is almost being tooled in like an influencer direction. Like, all respect, I think Jordan Fisher is one of the most talented people I've ever seen, but he's not a commentator. You know what I mean? He's definitely more on the content creation side of things, and he was also involved. Look, this happened in Overwatch as well. It's very common for developers to use content creators with large followings. They want to leverage that reach and involve them. Like, we used Tim the Tatman for so many things. I mean, I think we were almost planning to have him on the desk at the grand finals. We had Stir, we had Huck involved in, early Overwatch broadcasts who were brought in over. A lot of, really competent commentators. This is something that happens. Esports used to be the marketing budget of a lot of games.
Yes.
Now that marketing budget gets put alongside esports and sometimes in tandem with it. So it's a bit of a murky one to sort of to navigate, especially when we're deciding who deserves to be working on what show, and it's and there's always a risk of gatekeeping. In the past, like, because I'm a bit of a purist as a play-by-play commentator, and I'm really I'm really technique and craft focused. I'll be honest with you right now. I was pissed off when Monty and Doa came to the Overwatch League and were instantly considered the #1 casters when I'd been casting that game for years. But I just had to prove that I was good enough to stand amongst them. Right? This is
Rightfully
it's the
so.
this is what you have to deal with.
This
This is what you have to deal with as a commentator, though. Like,
Yeah.
we have to do it.
And it's going to happen in Valorant. It is going to happen. We've got Tasteosis coming in, and yeah, like, the game knowledge wasn't quite there for those guys. But if there's casters like at my level that do like the Nerd Street, win the championships and stuff, if you are one of those people and you're not shit scared at the fact that these big guns are starting to come in, that is just like the first ship of many that are about to sail into this game. So you've got to grind in. I think a lot of the stuff that you said last week is to penny or whatever to what the reason why we haven't seen a lot of these bigger guns come in. But I was doing events that D-Man was trying to do in Europe. Like, that's scary competition, right? Like, it's such a difficult scenario.
He can't get those events.
No, of course he can. Like,
any of those events.
I remember there was an event that I was tentatively down for, but I said no. We're gonna get Jacob and D-Man in, and there's no other budget left to do anything else. And it's like, I can't be upset at that. You know what I mean? I'm like, well. No. Fuck me, I guess I can't do much about that. Move on to the next one. And so, just as like an aside as well to Lofar and Jonas. Jonas was exceptional on that broadcast. I was blown away with how great he was and how great he is. And from my understanding, he wants to continue doing that. Clearly, Lofar does because he's doing challenges. So it's great to see that it isn't just a one-off thing that they're hoping to do, that they are genuinely passionate about being involved. So power to them. And I don't want my chance to come in at the expense of somebody else, really. And I think that was another thing that came into the conversation where like, I think Pansy on Reddit got criticism of not dedicating full time to Valorant, and that kind of came from my perspective of, it was like a bastardized version where I said, even in the Twitch chat of the episode last week, that I don't like the fact that First Strike talent is coming in to do the first week of challenges. I feel like there's a great opportunity for other people, not including me. You've got Vince, who can't do anywhere else in the world right now. You've got people like Tom Beers. There's other casters other than me that should get a foot in the door to do some of these official Riot things. But now you can imagine the 5 that are doing a broadcast for challenges, doing masters as well, and then doing the challenges following. And so it is really difficult and certainly more competitive in Europe because there's just less opportunities. But I don't think that the talent that are involved, they're so good that it's going to be tricky. I don't want my chance to come at the expense of other people, right?
I think the last thing I'll say on this topic, I think we could actually have a splinter podcast to talk about this kind of stuff in general, right? And I hope that this segment sort of gets clipped and is another good example of maybe giving people a look into the life of broadcasters right now. I think there's a lot of fear about like a lot of these top broadcasters swooping into Valorant and taking the gigs and then just fucking off when they find something better. I can see that concern echoed amongst a lot of the people that are really putting the work in the scene right now. And of course, like, I've been there. I was working Overwatch, and then like Semler, Monty, and Doa came in and got put straight in pole position as sort of top billing commentators, and I had to deal with that. It does happen. That's actually, they earned that. They actually earned that in previous titles. They did.
Right.
And that's what people just need to understand. That people out here grinding right now. I mean, guys talk to me like, yeah, man, I've been grinding for like 12 months. Okay, I mean, I've been grinding for 12 years. I mean, who's counting? I mean, like, people have short memories. People forget this stuff, and no one, the last thing I want to do is go, you come talk to me when you've done 4 years of radio broadcast before, you even got to do, like, this is not how we want to have a conversation. But I think it's important for a lot of those commentators to realize that, especially, there are a lot of COVID casters, right? There are a lot of commentators that picked up the trade because for whatever reason, they were stuck inside of the pandemic, wanted something to do. Maybe they lost their IRL jobs and were trying to find a revenue stream, which is a really bad idea to try and do that as a commentator. Like, don't. Be a day trader instead, for fuck's sake. Go buy GameStop if you want to make some money in
Should
in
I
this
do
sort
that
of
then?
situation.
Dogecoin,
go do that.
Dogecoin.
Yeah, go on, get that Dogecoin. Go $1, baby. Diamond hands to the moon. Anyway, look, we talk about casting, but I really want to talk about what we did see in the EVCT. So NIP, Fun Plus Phoenix, Wave Esports and Monkey Business, they all advance to the closed qualifier 2 bracket. I mean, first of all, Team Liquid, I mean, that's brutal. But we saw them really put up quite a show against G2 quite recently. And now FunPlus comes out of nowhere. I mean, they weren't included in the Red Bull Homeground tournament, right? They come and just fucking remind everybody where they've been and what they've been up to.
And I think for this first map, like Haven, Liquid were a better team. They should have won that if it wasn't for just huge individual mistakes and honestly, just a bit of unluckiness when it came to timings of peaks and stuff like that. People going into this, I've seen people calling for Eccles' head again. It's like, have we not fucking learned this from First Strike, just how this team can do? And they're playing up against FPX, who, considering G2 lost against NIP, at least are looking the most in form at the moment, right? So they've lost to G2 in the Red Bull Homeground final. They lost to Heretics in First Strike, who then went on to win the event. And then they lost to FPX, who at least is looking like the most cohesive team at the top. You can't be mad at this team, especially when they lose on such obvious stuff that Sliggy can at least go, yeah, this is what we need to work on. Our attacking side on these maps is clearly not good. We can put in some attempt. But at least they're trying stuff with the addition of Sky. Soulcast is a huge run of form currently at the moment.
Yeah, after he got so much criticism, you know, around First Strike.
It's just such an unfortunate thing, really, when you sort of look at the seeding of this, right? If it's a double elimination again, would they sort of go up against Wave, who had an exceptional run against Fnatic? Sure, but can they replicate that? Probably not. And so you could be in a position where NIP, where G2, Team Liquid, and maybe even Fnatic, if they got another chance, could qualify when they really should be based off form. Obviously, if they lose these best of threes on a consistent basis, they don't deserve to be here. I mean, look at Guild. They were awful. But you've got to sort of at least treat this with a little bit more of a safety net, because double eliminations in this part of the tournament, at least, is a necessity. Especially when we get to the next week coming up where you're qualifying for Masters, and then Masters itself. If Masters is a single elim, much like First Strike was, again, you learn nothing about the scene. It's so difficult to go, this team is better than that team, because we don't get to see them play. Even when they do play, it's a best of one, is broadcasted. And then when they do play in a best of three that's broadcasted, it's just one game. Like, we've seen G2 play against NIP like 5 times recently, which is fine. But I want to see NIP play up against Fnatic. I want to see him play up against FPX. I want to see the Emil Doombros matchup, but we can't, because it could be months before we see these two teams play off.
Hey, Ryan, I have a super serious question, and don't try to be too political with this, all right? Because it's actually very serious. FPX joined EU, and I crowned him. I crowned him second best in EU. I love FPX. I still think they're second best in EU, right? You take a look at Liquid, and they fell off. But now, looks like they got that second breath. Yeah, they fell off again in that qualifier. What's the urgency on them qualifying with this second VCT? And what do you think is to come if they don't? Because I feel like this is definitely a scenario that we're going to be discussing in the future if things don't get better. Because, I mean, it's the elephant is in the room, baby.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Scream on your roster and he is the MVP, even when they lose in a series like that, playing that consistently, you've got to treat this very sensitively. And at least a good thing is, you know, Soulcast obviously kind of spit his dummy out with the Yinsu stuff before. Came out and apologized, put on a good performance at Red Bull, best response he can have. And Eccles clearly understands the gravity of the situation. He's on Team Liquid, he's the IGL, and if he's bottom fragging, he knows and he's admitted that it's just not enough, that his number could be up if he doesn't put in those performances. So it's not like Team Liquid are ignorant to the scenario. It really does depend on who they come up against, right? They could get Heretics in the first best of one in the qualifiers. And so you can't really be too upset at them if they fail to qualify in those kind of things either.
I feel like Team Liquid for me is almost like the storyline of Cloud9 Blue. Like Team Liquid being Fish 1, 2, 3, Cloud9 Blue being like Tens and Friends. And then whenever they join into a Cloud9 or a big org, they're always falling short, where Cloud9 Blue has never really won anything. But when they have to face against teams, they're always facing against some tough opposition where, you know, you lose. It's like you're almost there, but you can never really reach it yet.
It's heartbreaking.
Exactly. And that's the same scenario where you have like Tens that's in that roster versus like Scream that's in the roster for Liquid, where Tens can kind of be like the MVP. If he doesn't pop off, the team loses. If Scream doesn't pop off, the team potentially loses, right? So it's a tough spot to be where you want to be right now in Team Liquid. And when you're looking at this top 8 right now, they had to play against arguably one of the top 3 teams in North America before we got into First Strike, with FPX being in that team. So I don't think you should or you could discredit a lot from Liquid's performances or just Liquid as a whole right now, because then again, this team looked very, very good in homegrowns for Red Bull, right? And they continue to look very, very good. Versus FPX, yes, they lost in 2 maps.
You can look
But
good.
both of those maps went fucking double OT.
Okay, you can look good, but shit, if you lose, you lose, man. Like, come on, man. Like, you know what? You like, I'm trying to find a perfect analogy, but looking good isn't good enough. Like let's look at the NBA. Like, if you're a team that always hits playoffs and you're always first rounded, is just looking good enough for you? I know these players want to win. Not just Scream either. All of those players want to win. Looking good doesn't cut it. Something's going to have to happen, because if you keep missing the big dance, then what's the point of even competing if you're trying to get to the highest level? You want to get to the top. So why even settle for less, man? You have the best individual player in the fucking game on your roster. Take advantage of that, okay? Something needs to change. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe mindset, roles. I don't know. I love Liquid, and I want to see them thrive, man, but something has to happen. I don't think by just telling them you're looking good is good enough, because they haven't really accomplished what they can accomplish with the potential that they have on this roster.
Okay, I mean, they lose, look, again, in perspective, they lose 13-15, then 15-17 over 2 maps. So yes, they need to do better, but they're not as far off of better.
They're not.
There,
And
I
then
feel.
we wouldn't.
Almost there.
They're there.
I think it's more like the problem with this team is that it's bit them in the ass really badly. And you look at teams like NRG, LG in North America. The reason why they're so good is because they played in literally everything they could get their hands on. I think there was a bit of ego very early on in the Ignition events for Team Liquid where they didn't want to show their hand. And it took them literally months to get Scream onto a role where he's playing Jet and now looks like one of the best Jets within the region, which, you know, is a smart move, but it took a while for it to come through. The luxury that we're missing is just multiple tournaments. If we had a home ground every month, then you could sort of see that momentum build up, that experience more than anything, because clearly that's what it is. We see Team Liquid scrimming and they may have good results, for example, but you put them in an official, they make some horrendous mistakes, as we saw in that tournament, right? So what they need to do is just get that experience on the stage. It's very difficult. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a fairground in an online scene as well. But it's just what this team could do in the future. Also, you have to bear in mind in North America, you've got Cloud9, Counter-Strike players falling from the ceiling into people's rosters at this point now because the scene is seemingly falling apart when it comes to players moving over. Europe doesn't have that. The scene is pretty cushy there. And what, Team Liquid were playing with Yugi at some point? Is that a huge signing for them necessarily to make up for rocking the boat a little bit? Who's to say that if they drop Eccles, that Soulcast, Cryptics, the whole team just goes, we don't want to be a part of this roster anymore?
It'll be another Cloud9 T1 situation.
Okay. Let me say this. So, you know what, Vance? You have a big point. You have a huge point. I'm sorry, I was thinking about this the whole time. Vance,
it's really big, Vance.
You follow.
It's like...
Okay, but hear me out.
Big point.
Vance, you followed Rainbow Six. And this is the same scenario. In NA, Space Station Gaming, they were a top 4, top 5 team. They had more ties than wins and losses. That means that every game against a top team, they would tie it. It doesn't matter. They were always there. And people were like, oh, you know, we like them. You know, they're almost there next season. But guess what? The same shit happened. Just because you're looking good doesn't mean success is going to come. Sometimes those ties and those close losses, they are what they are, losses and ties. It doesn't matter if they were close or far. At the end of the day, it is what it is. But guess what Space Station did? They brought on Canadian, and now what are they? They're world champions. Sometimes it takes that one small change. I'm not saying Team Liquid needs a team change, but something has to change. Just a pat on the back isn't good enough. Almost winning all the time is losing all the time.
I mean, it's going to hurt all the more for Team Liquid, right?
It's
like,
losing.
I imagine after those lot that they're going to want to light a fire up under their ass again. And clearly they can't, because Soulcast has now become one of the best second entries within the region. And he's playing Sky pretty much full time. Like, that's a Super Saiyan, like, light up when it comes to anybody. And he's playing underneath Scream and still looking good. Like, Christ, that's a big upgrade. It's going to be tough with Eccles. I think it's going to be tough with Team Liquid overall with how they're playing comps, but at least they're providing something a little bit different. It's just we don't have the data points. We don't have the entries to know how would Team Liquid face up against X, Y, and Z team. Are
That's
they?
it.
I think we could say that they're a top 8 team in the region comfortably. Are they top 5? Are they top 3? We will not know for months. We might not even know by the end of Masters, depending on how these matchups go. Who's to say that Wave Esports, again, just get an easier seed? I'm not trying to discredit what happened to them, but you still kind of feel that they go through it, have an easier time, and then make it to the final. Hell, some people were arguing that Heretics had that in some cases, which when they played up against Team Liquid and G2, how can you say that at that point?
I don't know how you say that.
I love Ryan on the show, yo. Bring him back
Listen,
more.
I tell you what here's what shaped NA Valorant in the last few months. It was the back-to-back complexity, invitational, and the NSG Winter Championship. Yep. That is what gave those tier 2 teams those reps, that stage time that Ryan is talking about, to now be the teams that are actually fucking qualifying through the VCT, right? Like the X-Sets, the Luminosities, the NRGs, the Genjis of the world. Yep. Those are the teams that were just out there, like, playing for 10K and just, doing their thing. Whereas, TSM are on a fucking holiday.
Right.
That makes a big difference right now with the scene in flux so much. You take a week off, you take a huge hit to your performance.
Yep. That's
let's move on. Let's move on though. We've got to get through a couple of these other games, because one of the weirdest looking games there is Monkey Business 2 or OG 2-0 over Guild. Now, I actually watched this one. We see that Rare EU Reina come out. Guild, what is going on with Guild?
Nuts. I think there's a pretty logical explanation to this, because if you watch this game, you will see, I'll be honest, how Valorant shouldn't be played.
Wow.
Fundamentals were awful for this team, and they lost to a team that honestly embarrassed themselves against Liquid in the Red Bull home ground with the whole what AKM said and the way that they performed.
Yeah.
Guild played like this too. Guild did not play well, and you've got Safe, who I would argue Safe is like Sick from Sentinels. Very flexible, very strong. Maybe not the first name you pick up when it comes to like MVP and the impact potential, but he can play everything the team needs. He's stuck on Sentinel role, literally like the killjoy for the most part. And it just feels like such a shoehorn in. It's just not a good look when you have one of the brightest talents and you're putting him on a role that, I'll be honest, anybody can realistically play at any point. And so I feel the main reason is that they've got this new roster together. They've just got a coach. I think they went into home ground and this week of challenges to just drop the chips and see where they fall, honestly. See what they need to work on and go from there. I don't think that this is indicative of what we'll see in the future for Guild, or at least I hope not. If this is the same with Safe playing the Killjoy in Challengers 3 or Masters 2 or whatever, then I'll be really concerned about what this team is going to do, because they all looked awful.
But Ryan's sitting.
That's what I'm thinking, man. It's like there's not that many opportunities for any of these teams to put themselves out there and practice strats or anything like that too, because when you're looking at Rainbow Six, for example, Veli, it's a weekly league. They have matches pretty much every week, and it's confirmed. And they have one team that they have to study against, and then they're going to practice for that. Now, as now it's very similar in VCTs in North America, but for Europe, it's the only platform where they could actually try everything they've practiced is actually going through the gruesome BO1 qualifiers to see if it's going to work out or not. And you don't even know who the fuck you're facing when you're going through these brackets, because the seeding's all over the place when you're going through. So you don't know who you're playing against. You don't know who you could potentially play against. You don't know how to prepare, what agents to come out, what map is going to be played.
Just full send. You just full send.
Exactly. It's like a gamble for all of these teams right now, which is why it's so hard to justify if a team is actually underperforming or overperforming at that point. Yes, you could, for me, you could definitely say like G2 and stuff are overperforming because they're always at the top there. But for all the other ones that are trying to grind, it's just, I don't know, man. It's so random going into the brackets playing against these teams.
I mean, that series as well saw AKM actually be really effective as an entry fragger. When beforehand, like I shit on him. He's like he's legitimately an IRL friend of mine. Like I legitimately would hang out with Dylan back when he was in LA. But like they didn't look very good initially.
Dylan.
They looked, we're cool like that. So I use his first name. Yeah.
Literally the copy pasta.
Y'all fucking mad. But yeah, he looked really good on the Jet. Element actually, ironically, is plus 18 in KD, but -3 in first kills, the first death. So he is literally the cleanup crew over the course of that series and plays the Reina in a really similar way, in my opinion, to what we see from Thief, right? Over in NA, right? Really, really mechanically nasty, very skilled. Is not opening up so many of these fights. Kind of like a second entry in many ways. But the amount of clutch rounds that we saw from him across the series, he has 2 4Ks in that series, and sort of just a really, really impressive performance across that series in general. Unco looks great on the smoker role as well. He was a support player back in Overwatch and didn't get to do much shooting at all. He played Ana and tried to have some sort of impact. But these guys are actually professional shoot mania players, right? Before they got into Overwatch.
Shoot mania.
So that is a hardcore arena shooter.
Yes.
3 versus 3, man. It was dope.
It's fucking intense.
hard.
Yeah.
They are Shoot Mania world champions.
Oh my
Look
god.
it up.
EZK played that, by the way.
He
fun
did?
fact. Yeah,
Yep.
and XP3 from Complexity. They were playing Shoot Mania.
Skilled
Yeah.
gamers, man.
So these guys, yeah, they don't fuck around. They're very sharp, and I think that Valorant suits them a lot more. I also think that Vic reminded me a lot of how we were so impressed with Artis's utility usage on Icebox on the Sova. He is functioning really impressively as a caller on this team. A lot of the time, especially those A-site hits on attack, we really saw Vic get a heck of a lot of value from the Sova, right? Understanding how to really get shocked up positioning, force players off positions, which is impressive considering maybe Guild's not super easy to do your homework on, but he definitely comes into that game, looks like he's very well prepared. And I think that impact that he has at this overall really gives him the win. So yes, Guild looked pretty shit. But I actually have to eat my words and say that Monkey Business are looking much better than they did previously. But
and they beat Entropic as well, and Entropic beat Heretics.
Yeah, exactly. Can someone tell me who the fuck Wave Esports is? I have no idea. I admit to being ignorant.
Yeah,
I'm ignorant to this.
It's a German org. They're really good in Fortnite for some reason. I think they had some like 16-year-old kid win like, I don't know, like $2 million, probably knowing the prize pools in that. But this is a team that's been around for quite some time. Wave have put on a couple of events themselves, but they've looked stronger. I casted them in this like level regional clash for the DACH region, which is known for being super weak. It's got Big in there, and Big are not a very good team in Europe either. And so I've seen a bit of Wave, and they've changed up a little bit on how they play. They had Muri, who was their Raze player now, on Silver full time. They moved him to the Raze, obviously. And then they moved Nico, who was the Breach player, to Sky. And oh my god, for some reason, nobody can deal with it. Muri was not only on a tear this game, but he was on a tear throughout the whole of the qualifiers that we didn't get to see. This guy was nuts. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that they can replicate, but they really took advantage of a Fnatic team that, whilst it's great to see them under that name, they have to adjust quickly to making sure that they keep that name. I'm not saying that they should be dropped. Not that at all. Don't come after me like people did for Yinsu. But what I am saying is that Fnatic, it's a tall thing to lead under. And I think a lot of teams, when they get signed, they have to adjust quickly to this new weight on their shoulders, right? That they are now Fnatic, and they need to get those results. It doesn't really matter now if they lose to something like Wave, but if you get into that wrong mentality and you can't pick up a win, for example, in a tournament like this, then that's just going to weigh on you more and more. The community is going to meme on you more and more. Like Team Liquid was loved when they were Fish 1, 2, 3. Now people love to watch them lose, right? So Fnatic do need to be a little bit careful of that. I don't think it's going to happen, but it was interesting to see them kind of fall apart a little bit to a very surprising team in Wave.
I think that I've seen this happen before. I think for a team like Fnatic, and if you get to see much of the game, I think I got to gloss over it briefly. Wave looked pretty awful on Bind. I thought that Fnatic were just going to completely roll them. I think then Fnatic just run out. They run out of gas across that series. Fnatic look really bad on Split. They get ground out, and they get no defensive rounds. They just get rolled on attack.
Correct.
As Wave just sort of pick up this sort of momentum. And we are seeing Mo obviously playing the Reyna on Split there, and I don't feel like there was like a ton of value gained there for Fnatic. It's so interesting the cross pollination we're seeing. It's just as an aside, is NA's picking up the Sage a bit more, and then EU's picking up the Reyna a little bit more, and both regions are still struggling to incorporate those two agents respectively into their compositions. But this Muri guy is pretty insane on the Raze, like you were saying before. So okay, I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see this from Wave, but obviously Fnatic, it always looks a little bit embarrassing to them after getting picked up by this sort of roster and then sort of stumbling. But you know, you have to hope that they tighten the bootstraps and come back a bit stronger. Do you think that we got? Do you think that any of our top 4 are going to really struggle to qualify? I know it's best of 1. I know it's not double Ilium, but are there any fears about the teams that don't make it through, sort of continuing to struggle?
So I think with the qualified teams, you still have question marks over all of them. FPX more so because the first time that we saw them with Dimasic, it was a really good result to beat Liquid, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they played particularly very well. Dimasic especially got shut down a lot, and he is meant to be coming in as a Meadow replacement, which I read it as Meadow is way too passive of a player. We want somebody that's good at setting up his own plays and being super aggro, like a Proto is probably the best example in the world right now, but Team Heretics is Pora, just that they will just run across the map. If you look at like heat maps and stuff for Pora within the first 30 seconds, he's like 2 fucking maps beyond at that point. He's just holding W. Like, you're playing on Haven, he's on Bind, ready to sort of take the whole site. But it didn't come down. But that's mostly because Team Liquid didn't let Dimasic have anything. His lurks were constantly shut down. And so, you know, speaking to Doombros a little bit afterwards and sort of seeing his tweets and stuff, they were like, oh, we have a lot to work on, right? So I think that every team could get upset here. You obviously have to look at Wave and Monkey Business and go, yeah, I don't know about that. It depends on who they run into, obviously, because they could just run into Fnatic and Guild again, and it's the whole GTA meme all over.
Yikes.
So,
So,
fun.
but it really does depend on how it gets seeded, because it's based on, it's not like, obviously seeding matches aren't a good thing in Nerd Street Gamers, but at least it sets up different interactions. Even with teams going down from the upper bracket to the loser bracket, they switch it around so you're not playing on the same bracket side, for example. In Europe, it's the 560 bracket all the way down. So you could literally see who's going to run into who, and you kind of go, oh, well, Heretics have to beat Entropic, Monkey Business, and then they need to run into Guild later on. You could see it come to pass, and so it would be nice to get to a position where the teams that go to this qualifying game, like the ones that we saw broadcasted, are seeded based on previous results. That's even more difficult when you have new rosters coming in, you have new players coming into certain rosters too, with some of the moves that we've had. It's just, you are never going to get a strong seeding thing. So whilst it's easy to rag on Riot in this retrospect, somebody's constantly going to get screwed over. Even Heretics in First Strike got screwed over in their seeding. They managed to make it work, but they had a hell of a time trying to do it.
All right, that pretty much caps our discussion on the European VCT. We were saving, I guess, the best potentially for last year. Well, at least they had more than best of ones to play through. It is the NA VCT. Ryan, we're going to keep you around for a little bit here because I'm quite sure you have been perusing and presiding over a few of these matches. Obviously, the qualifying process was grueling between January 27 and 31. And if you remember, it was Immortals that get the top seeding over Envy, sort of 3-1 in that final. And then we turn up to the main event. It's a double elimination bracket. We get some really great matchups straight off the bat, right? We get to see Immortals exit, which I think was one I was looking forward to. And it turns out, as I just go to the bathroom real quick, I'll kick you guys off. That was the only one of those quarterfinals that was really remotely competitive.
Am I going?
Go ahead.
Just go.
Like, it's impossible to shut you up half the time, and now you need a written invitation to open your mouth. Come on.
Oh yeah, no, it was some great tournaments going on here for the VCTs in North America. Immortals next set continues, like Immortals for me throughout this whole tournament continues to impress me. Again, in that same interview, as I mentioned before, that Gunby head, these guys are the type of team that just walks into any type of matchup and are okay, not necessarily okay. They walk in with the mentality that they could actually lose this game. So there's a training regimen for Immortals where they actually get into their matches or get online 2 hours before their matches and still continue to study VODs and everything too. So to be able to see that those guys make it to the grand finals was a great run for the Immortals. Although I think I do love the storyline of Sentinels at this point, getting knocked out and getting revenge matches versus LG and Immortals coming back from the lower brackets is probably the biggest storyline for me looking at this bracket.
Now, let's be completely honest, and it's the Sentinels and Luminosity rivalry that's starting to brew up. Is starting to become something beautiful, right? I remember when I was watching them play for like the 5th time in the bracket, I was like, holy shit, they got to be fucking tired of each other. But every time they play against each other, they still ramp it up to another level, even if it's just a game for seeding, which doesn't make sense. Take a look at Immortals and Xset. That was exciting. Immortals being this good Vans, you and I was talking about this before the show started in chat. Let me know how you feel about Immortals. Let's be honest. We've been watching Immortals' journey since, they became a team. Team change through team change. They were always like right there. We were like, okay, they're good. They're not bad. You know what I'm saying? But they're not great.
Yeah.
They're starting to look great now. And there's one big reason why I think they're starting to look great. And he's become one of my favorite duelists to watch. Top 3. It's going to be that man Shot Up, yo. Shot Up is fucking ridiculous. He is not scared of anybody, and he makes plays happen. When you think the round is turned over on his head, he makes it to where Immortals win. And I think that Immortals finally found their groove with this team. I hope they didn't show too much. I hope they still stay on top, because their type of gameplay to me is like, I like it, man. I want to see what more can come from this. And teams like TSM, 100 Thieves, Sentinels, they're probably looking at Immortals as well, like, yo, all right, we got another team in the conversation, boys. Let's ramp this the fuck up.
No, definitely. I think when you're looking back at Immortals, even I remember when I was watching Valoranting as a fan, and it was Moses, you, and you guys had Mel come on, and she's like, one of the most mechanically gifted players that I like right now from like the tier 2 scene is Shot Up himself. And I remember seeing Shot Up when he was playing with Immortals as Ray's on Bind, and mechanically was so good. And now he's switching over to Arena and is still very much impactful for the team. I think when you're looking at the up-and-coming players or the up-and-coming teams right now of LG and Immortals is also based off the fact that they have very aggressive players that could get away with these type of kills playing as Reyna. So that's going to be another player for me is going to be Thief. So the roster themselves for both of these teams have been looking good. But I think in the end, when you want to talk about the whole way of adapting in this tournament, again, I have to give it to Sentinels. Sentinels continues to prove that they're going to be the top team, if not the #1 team in North America. And correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree here, Ryan, at this point, and Mitch, is Sentinels, they were the team that were always going to be at the top going into Ignition Series, going to First Strike. They got the second place. Then they got the JBL Cup, which they won. And then you get down to, they didn't get second place at First Strike, was TSM and 100 Thieves. But nonetheless, to get back to JBL, they win that one. And then they're like, okay, well, we kind of see Sentinels kind of be at the top again. And then they start losing, but then they readapted and boom, they're back at the top. And they look so good playing versus LG and Immortals when they had the revenge match in the lower bracket finals and also going back into the grand finals. It was kind of like the old new. It was like just the Sentinels being kind of like careless. The swagger that they come in with the attitude, like the mentality of like, we're gonna fuck you up in this server, and they did versus LG, and it looked very good. And they beat Immortals at their own game, putting Sinatra onto Reyna and just being overly aggressive on Icebox. And where they wanted to be a little bit more tactical on Icebox just became like, hey, let's bring out the all-out brawl, take over the A site, put that wall up, get those 1 versus 1, and we're gonna win those on post-plan situations instead of playing like hey, let's bring the Sky, let's try to bring the fucking dog out for the Trailblazer and Flash on the left side. No, let's just fucking fight them.
Tasmanian tiger, you fuck.
It was so good. It was so good.
Something has to be said, and I'll say it. Remember when I called out Sentinels in a good way, and I was saying they need to wake up and realize they're a championship team. Like they need to dominate, and I want to see them dominate. They dominated, right? And there was one player that I was really vocal about before the stream too, because in that Luminosity game, that haircut is the best, Vance. I was very vocal. I was saying that was
the Black Parade, motherfucker.
Yeah, you get some black fingernail polish, like rock the look, yo. But one thing I was really proud of in that Luminosity game, I expected Sinatra to take over. He had a bad game, and I said I want him to just go back to his dominant nature. Sinatra. It's been fucking scary. Sinatra on Reyna, Sinatra on Raze, Sinatra on any duelist out there. He's automatic positive 10. Like automatically taking over it. He is gonna be better than your best player. And I'm really happy that First Strike happened because like even Hiko, playing around, calling him out, hey, we have Austin, us making that a little storyline, which was really great for First Strike, right?
Yeah.
Sinatra has to be tired of this shit. Sinatra's a competitor. We saw him in Overwatch. Uber. He didn't settle less than being the best, right?
Yes, I think that I think that he required a really strong coaching structure around him. Though Sinatra wasn't that great in his first season. He was young, impetuous.
There's a lot about him,
and he inside a strong coaching structure, he was enabled to be a great player. We're skipping around a bunch here, and this is maybe a chance to look at it more of an overarching conversation because that first match, the first time I saw Sentinels play Luminosity, right? Like I had been getting fucking, I'll be honest, tired of seeing Sentinels pick Icebox and getting fucked on it.
Yeah,
right?
and
Like
seeing
they,
Ascent in there after in the BO3.
right? Like
annoying.
it seemed to be this. It was every series that they played. It was like Icebox, then Split, and then Ascent if they fucking managed to win Split. But you know, Luminosity are one of the few teams that will pick Icebox against Sentinels, right? And they did that in this match. They said, "Fuck you, come at us. We're going to choose this map, and we're going to beat you on it." And they did. So that first time I saw them, I was like, "Okay, Icebox is always competitive between these two rosters." We get two different Sentinels on Icebox across both of the series they play against Luminosity, right? First, we see Sinatra playing the Raze, right? Raze is definitely what we, well, maybe more so expecting to see. And then we saw Split, and I'm like, okay, fuck me. If Sentinels can't win Icebox or Split, they're in deep trouble. Haven, I feel their Haven is an insta win. I still think that their Haven is one of the best. They've always banned Bind when they can, which was odd because we got to see them play Bind eventually in the final, and they looked really good. So that's a whole nother question. But
yeah,
it feels like Sentinels struggled a little bit, I think, because Immortals really read them. I think, I think we saw Shazam. Shazam was bitching about this sort of play style. Like there's nothing. It was like, it's not very intellectual what, Immortals are doing. They play heavy contact. They take duels. And I think this has been discussed, by a couple of people. I've seen it being discussed on Reddit and stuff like that. But I'm watching Immortals and I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, that's weird because Immortals seem to know where Dapper is at all times. Dapper goes on a podcast and admits to being a less aggressive Cypher on the loose side and not pushing too hard and just trying to make sure that they don't get flanked, but rarely trying to go find kills on his own. Thief read him so effectively on multiple occasions, right? Like, Immortals had a bunch of tape on Sentinels to use. Yep. And Sentinels are like, wow, they only beat us because they're run and gun. And well, I don't think that's necessarily true at all. Like you have to admit at some point that like teams are actually doing some research on you. Immortals are a very contact heavy team, but they're not nearly as contact heavy as like a Luminosity, right?
Yeah.
Who are just absolutely psychotic the way that they play the game. So, credit to Sentinels because they have to go to a lower bracket and they have to play against very contact heavy teams such as Anbox and Except to even get another chance at the final. So they are being, it's a baptism of fire for them going up against these teams that love to play fast and loose, and they had to adapt.
They almost lost to Gen G in the lower brackets too. Like Gen G should have had Haven in the bag versus Sentinels, and then it just slipped in the last like 3 rounds with like stupid mistakes. Like they wanted to close it so fast that they just kept rushing by themselves on Haven, and then it turned down to like a 13-11 for Sentinels in the end. But Gen G looked very good in that one too. And just to go back to what you were saying in terms of Sentinels, of how they adapted, I just love that as well. And you were saying like how you're surprised. Well, of course, with the banning system, Bind was going to be in there, but they looked good on that map for Sentinels. And also they made changes in that too, because you had you usually have Sick playing Raze on that map, where now he was playing Phoenix. And then you have Sinatra switching over to Raze, where he's been comfortable playing that role before as Raze on Bind as the early beta / Ignition series days. So they look pretty good as a whole for that too, to just understand as much how Immortals were playing that map. As much as Immortals, where people might think that they're really puggy and how they're very aggressive, is because, as you were saying here, Mitch, when you have a lot of tape on a team, you now know when would be the right timing for you to swing out and try to be aggressive or try to go for that peak at a certain time. It's going to be, okay, well, this smoke is coming out. I know I have a window of opportunity to come down towards Mail, for example, and get a kill down towards Sewers and just fucking dismiss away. So it's not necessarily like the play style that seems too loose. It's just like they know how to adapt versus their opponents, which is why you see LG and Immortals currently at the top in the tier 1 in North America. But it's also a reason why that Sentinels was able to come back in this fucking game. I'm going to keep saying that right now, but Sentinels fucking impressed me throughout this whole tournament.
Ryan, what is so different about this Sentinels team? Like, what can you? Because everyone's like, oh, they just adapted, they just changed, they just overcome their weaknesses and fought their demons.
Break it down.
What is this run back made of?
So I think the main thing that came was after the interview where Shazam called the strategy info stealing. They defined what these teams are doing. And nobody's really done that. And the funny thing is that, like, again, you'll have people like Sideshow call the Luminosity playstyle high contact. And it reminds me when people talk about playing the high ground in Overwatch, where people know what it means, clearly, but they don't know what it means. They don't know why people do that. And so you just have, like, Reddit Randy's just parroting, oh yeah, they just play a high contact play style. That's just LG all over without really understanding what it means. So that's probably one of the reasons why, Shazam was getting tilted, because I'm not necessarily saying like it's wings of a butterfly, the butterfly effect, the sideshow says that, and then suddenly that's all that Shazam hears. But you will have a lot of people kind of go, I kind of understand what he means, yeah. And so I think what was a key thing for Sentinels is they defined it and they clearly worked out how to play against it. I think there's some really good agents that are good for that kind of thing. I think that's why Sky's pick rate's gone up a lot, because you have the flash going around the corner and it makes a noise when it connects onto somebody. That's safe information on the defense. You know that there's somebody lurking, they're going to sneak around and you anchor onto that site. And Sentinels look best when they know where the attacking team is going to go, because they will anchor themselves on the B site, for example. And when they come on, they'll just take those duels on all of these off angles and win them time and time again. So the main thing is they realized what teams are doing. They didn't just wrap it off as saying it's no tactics at all. They realized the style and they found a nice counter to it.
And you think that Reyna is central to that style, or do you think that's just incidental and something that they wanted to try with Sinatra?
It's an interesting question because I think it's map dependent. Like, you'll see a lot of Reyna on Icebox, for example, literally be used as a sentinel. Because if you're a killjoy playing on the A site, by the time you hear something, it's too late. You're gone. So at least Reyna allows you the opportunity to not only push further ahead to get information, if you feel that you're going to get the kill, because you could just dismiss out as like, oh shit, gotta go. But also you can sort of hold your ground, get a kill, and then still get out. And so I think that's, again, it kind of baffles me that people would consider, oh, this is just Sentinels, kind of throwing their playbook out the window and just kind of going, screw it, because there is some semblance to strategy in what they're doing. Like, you look at Vitality, for example, whilst they didn't have a good showing for the VCT challenges period, at least, they would run Fiku, who is the Sentinel player, the Cypher player, as the Reyna, and that seems to be the way to go. I think Reyna's just a really good pick. But it's really cool, right? Like, it's gone from just this, Scream or Thief is just going to run forward and click heads on this agent because it's all about getting a kill and then using the utility as opposed to using the utility to get a kill. Yeah. But it does sort of show like the depth of strategy that's still yet to be maintained. So I think Sentinels just got a good grasp on what was going on and went, what are other regions doing? How are they dealing with it? The Reyna seems important, so let's take a leaf out of their book. But it's the whole people saying that Sentinels don't have any strategies. They do. Everything they do is a strategy. The problem is that we see the same plays time and time again. Like, they just need to embellish it a little bit more. And I think that's how a coach helps them. It's just, hey, try this instead of doing that. Because most people know what's going to happen.
So, sorry, I was just going to say, like, I think you and I, Mitch, we were saying at the same time, too, that at some point, Sentinels were looking too predictable, which is why now that you're seeing, like, a series being chosen on Icebox or Ascent becomes like, oh shit, it's not gonna be in favor of Sentinels at that point. But again, they changed it, like they changed it pretty much night and day from like, let's just randomly pick a Reyna and Sage onto Icebox, and it just worked out in their favor. So I don't think I think this is a new page now where Sentinels have more in their playbook where they're not going to be as predictable anymore because they could revert back to older strats. Now that they're going to play this map a lot more, right?
Do you think they were actually predictable? Do you think that was the problem? Like, from us as like maybe lay people not in the game, do you think they were looking predictable even as far as we can tell?
For me, let's take the example of Icebox again, and I've mentioned it before. It's like it's very telegraphed of how they wanted to take the A site. It was let's put Sick on Sky, bring out the Trailblazer, and as soon as he doesn't see anybody at Maze, then you're gonna have Zom's Paranoia on the left side, and now you'll explode into the site and then try to just fight it back on a pulse plan, or fight back on a pulse plan situation. So it was telegraphed that every time you heard a Trailblazer that came in from fucking A main, that a hit was gonna come towards A side eventually. There was never any big splits or anything like that back and forth, at least from what I could recall.
I think that it's interesting to see, why that the Sage and Viper is so covered on this map, because of the way you can section off the B side.
Correct.
I think teams have all had such an interesting approach to like trying to shorten some of those extremely long sight lines in the B side. The fact that you could throw up a Viper wall and get a plant safely, or a Sage wall. It's the same as people were doing on Bind, right? You hit the A side quickly enough, control U-Haul, and it's a free plant with the Sage because you just bang a wall up and throw the spike down.
It kind of goes onto the G2 thing real quick as well, because the Viper wall on B especially, because it denies information, it's like it forces the defenders to be in a dangerous position because they've got this Viper wall in front of them. So you have to go into this danger zone in order to just check what's going on. And that's kind of what I meant with like G2 being a bully team. You just sort of go, you have to come to where I can see you and where I can hit you if you want to see if I'm here or not. But NiP, they were doing that and then winning those fights nonetheless, which they really should not be doing. And so I think that's why the Reign is so good as well. It's all about being really hush-hush right now. And I think that understanding that and kind of giving it a term that isn't just high contact was the reason why Sentinels could just get over that hurdle, because it wasn't just LG that was doing it.
So reductionist to call it that, I guess. It's just high contact, no finesse or class. You know, that kind of makes it harder for you then to understand what they're doing when you dismiss it like that.
Yeah.
It's like just saying that it's dive or goats comp. Like there's just no, like, I mean, just calling it goats comp in itself, right? It's just, all right, yeah, I understand it. But no, you don't understand the win conditions of this, right? You need to sort of think a bit more into what they wanted to do as opposed to what they're doing.
I want to talk about one more thing before we end the show, because they're a team that we were really high on coming into this tournament and they fizzle hard. What happened to Envy?
First strike as well, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's be honest. They come into this tournament. We know that Envy favor a more structured style of playing. We've seen like a couple of changes with, Caboose playing a couple of different agents as they go through.
Yeah.
He's, playing a lot more Omen right now. We're seeing, Food on the Sage a little bit more, but they get really dismantled by Luminosity. I think that's the game that I am maybe looking at the closest. Like, they're the two competitive maps, but this is an Envy that we expect to be like, leading the charge here and being in like a grand final against Sentinels before they get crashed.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We kind of try to figure out where Envy is at right now, where, for example, Ascent or Bind, you usually have Mummy opping as Omen. But now recently in the changes in the forms of how Envy is playing, it seems as though they just want to keep Mummy on Jet on most of the maps, and then have Caboose maybe play Omen on most of the maps. But I'm not sure what is the reasoning behind what is the reasoning behind it. Is it because, like you said, Food is switching over now to sometimes playing Sky, sometimes playing Sage, so they want to have more utilities into the roster when they're going into these matches? These are things that they're testing out, where maybe with this not being the right solution, you might want to have Caboose back on Raze or something on certain maps, and depending on who you play against too. I think you have to look at who you play against. Knowing that you have to play against Thief, who's overly aggressive, then is the slow orbs the reason why they wanted to test things out to try to slow things down a bit? Is it going to be, well, if Thief is going to be aggressive, we're going to have Mummy be aggressive as well with a Jet, so he could go head to head and try to fall back. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that is, but they need to definitely look back on those matches. It's unfortunately them always
really
falling short on the bigger stages, right?
But it's weird though, because I actually wanted to VOD review Envy to figure it out. Like, I legitimately had a question. Were we hyping them off of their run with Pop Flash, and then the one qualifier after that where they clapped everybody? Because they didn't reach that level again after that when First Strike hit, leading up to now. It's kind of like they've just been quiet. We know that they have all the potential in the world. Caboose is fucking dead. I think Caboose is by far the best player on that team. He's serious, but they have the pieces. But what's not working? Me personally, like, I don't want to talk out of my ass. So, like, I actually want to study their games, but something just seems extremely just lackluster and awful.
Yeah, the NA teams always thought that they were going to be on top there.
Every NA team
was
thought
scared
that.
of them. Yeah,
Everyone
they're coming against. They're like, "Yo, Envy looks fucking good."
He looks so good, especially Pop Flash, man. Holy shit!
You don't even have to go back that far. Go back to the qualifiers for challenges, right? Where they beat Luminosity 2-0 in the quarters.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Where they look dominant. Their controlled style of play. They're actually retaking really impressively. They're weaving in some of like this more contact-based play style. Caboose is, getting a lot of value off the Omen. They're really effectively playing off of his utility. Like, Envy seemed like, especially with FNS at their helm, Envy seemed like a team to me that always had great mid to late round calls.
Yes.
Right? Their adaptations, their
rotations were insane.
Yeah, the nickel and dime side hits as well were just really impressive, right? And then you see them turn around and just get completely battered. I wonder, like, is this structured play style getting outdated because of all the teams finding so much success by by playing this really in your face, just with like staggered timings, aggressive style of play. I'm not going to use the word puggy anymore. I think that's really outdated. Even the term contact, like we've discovered, is a bit reductionist in terms of describing the eloquence of this aggressive style. But does Envy, like Gen G to a degree, does their playstyles need a revamp if they're going to compete with, Immortals, Sentinels now, Luminosity, Xset, all these teams that are at the forefront of actually playing this faster paced brand of Valorant?
I don't think so. I was just going to say real quick, and my take is that they've tried to just play a more European style of Valorant. It makes sense if the rumor is that Mike's from G2 is helping Envy at the moment, and you look at the fact that Food was playing Omen for the Winter Championship, which is honestly the best Envy looked. Like, that best of 3 against Sentinels went down to the wire, and Sentinels looked like the worst team through that series. But also, like, you had Food on the Omen, but now he's playing the Phoenix and the Sage, whereas Caboose before was playing much more aggressive agents. And so Envy just seemed that they're reining it back, playing less like double duelist, but wanted to just have that Sage utility, more for example. Yeah, more utility in the right places. Yeah. But when you play into Xset, you've got to be really fucking good at that kind of thing, because they will just come out of nowhere. We saw it time and time again from A Proto, just the 1 bullet, 1.5 second left clutch where Envy clearly didn't have their fundamental set. So I think it's one of these things where it's like, it's the Food or Caboose who's on Omen. Pick one and stay on it, because they have constantly changed it throughout their lifespan. They looked much better in that tournament with the Winter Championships because they had a bit more of aggressive freedom. But I think that the style that they're running at the moment is fine, but it's just going to take time, and it's got to take those games against Xset to work out how to beat them in the mind game. Look at NiP. The fact they don't run any duelists in some of their comps, but they run these supportive agents aggressively. And it's a really scary playstyle if you know what you're doing, and I think that's the direction that Envy should be going.
Definitely. I think they were unlucky, too, having to play against Sentinels in the Winners' Championship, right? It's like the 8th time that they play Sentinels, and they just can't find an answer to them, too. So they got 5th to 8th with that one, but then when you look at even First Strike, I wouldn't necessarily say that they choked, because that's not the right term to use, but like there seems to be something where I remember like an interview, I think it was Caboose and Mummy that were talking with DDK on Immortal Minds, and they were like, man, it's just something that, there's a switch that we need to turn on, and a hurdle that we can't seem to pass like on the big stage, because everything just looks so well and so clean during the scrims and our preparation to the matches, but when it comes down to when it matters, it just can't get to replicate what was going well for them in the scrims. So you could definitely walk in, like looking at Envy, they're definitely walking into these matches very well studied and prepared, but the performance just, I don't know if it's a jitters or something like that, right? Like looking at the grand finals, for example, of Immortals and Sentinels, how Immortals was so one-sided, it was a lot. You could tell, at least for me, that it looked like it was a lot of the jitters and nerves going into Immortals in that grand finals versus Sentinels, where Envy just seems to always have that type of nerve that they can't shake off going into like these big important matches where they could actually win tournaments.
Right. I just find that bizarre considering the veteran leadership that roster has and the history that the players have. But I mean, we'll keep an eye out for them. They, Gen G, NRG, and Box, those 4 teams fail to qualify through this close bracket. And of course, we've got T100 Thieves, TSN, so many teams. I mean, so many teams that are fighting for a chance when we get to challenges too. So that is just
fucking insane.
It is absolutely mental. So there's a ton of fantastic Valorant on the horizon. Before we wrap up, I just want to take the chance to thank you, Ryan, for coming on the show, man. It's really great to have more European focused perspective, also just to get some of your takes on these guys. And on a personal note, I promise you I'll keep fighting to understand some of what's going on in the casting world, and I hope you just keep putting the hard work, man. You've got a great work ethic, and I think you're talented, man. So please stick at it, and I wish you the best of luck, man.
Thank you. Honestly, this kind of thing helps. Like, I know that I turn into full YouTuber when I start talking. I have like a 10-minute timer in my head just to get that ad revenue almost. So all I'm going to say is I could definitely do a practice in my analyst desk, because that might come up sooner rather than later. With any luck, not to jinx myself, but that's the hope at least. And so I'm more than happy to be the guy that's like, yep, I'm calling in from Europe. It's still best of ones and a crock of shit over here. So
back to you guys in the studio utopia of best of threes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's been a blast, man. I miss seeing you on the big screen.
Yeah, I miss America too.
And of course, everybody, don't forget to give us a follow over at Twitter. We are twitter.com/DNPeak or at twitch.tv/DNP. I mean, if you I mean, if you're here watching it live, you kind of already know that. Our YouTube URL is still not customized, so you'll find that with exclamation mark Valoranting in the chat. This is just kind of what happens when you forge out on your own and create a new YouTube channel for a product. This is just the way it be. Next week, we're going to be back Tuesday, 11 a.m. PDT once more. There'll be a lot to discuss, I'm quite sure. So stick around, ladies and gentlemen, for that one. Thank you very much. And until next time, keep ranting, keep loving Valorant, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.